Chapter 720. Ling Han smiled faintly, and once again evolved the thunderclap ninth heaven in his knowledge sea. When, the light emitted by the martial arts stone immediately changed from green to red. Seeing this scene, Jia Ming's expression was slightly grave. If Ling Han could be a little stronger, he might really be able to leave his name on the martial arts stone. Ling Han no longer used the 3 styles of black origin. Instead, he used the annihilating dragon star arrow. He used the 3 mystical powers at the same time, and his divine sense transformed into a small person. It flashed like lightning in his mind, shooting out arrows that could annihilate stars. It couldn't be helped. The 3 styles of black origin and the annihilating dragon star arrow conflicted with each other. It was impossible to use them at the same time. Otherwise, using 10 heaven tier sword techniques at the same time would be comparable to the 3 styles of black origin. The light emitted by the stone of martial art changed again, from red to black. Suddenly, all the names on the stone disappeared, and 2 words appeared again: leave a name. This meant that in the future, Ling Han's battle prowess might also surpass the geniuses of previous generations and squeeze into the top 100. I'm going crazy. Another person who can surpass the geniuses of the ancient era has appeared. Am I seeing things? Such a genius should only appear once in a generation. What's going on? 2 heroes standing side by side, are they going to fight for supremacy in the future? Not necessarily, not necessarily. This is only their ultimate combat strength in the future. It's not certain that they will be able to achieve it. What's more, Su Xiuran, Dong Ling, and the others are definitely hiding their trump cards. They're definitely not weaker than Jia Ming. That's right. There's also the Heaven Sword Sect's Small Sword Emperor and the Blue Thunder Sect's Son of Lightning. They aren't weak either. Everyone said one after another, but this did not cover up Ling Han's brilliance at all. He was a monster who could compete with the strongest geniuses of the 5 major sections. Ling Han casually wrote down his name, and in a short while, the martial arts stone changed. His name appeared on the list, while the Lunar King was squeezed out of the top 100. 78th place. This result moved everyone and made Jia Ming's face turn green, but Ling Han found it somewhat unacceptable. Even with 3 great divine abilities, it was only ranked 78th. This wasn't because his cultivation level was low, which was why his ranking was low. Rather, it was because he had developed his mystic arts to the extreme, or compared to those of the same cultivation level. In ancient times, there were at least 77 geniuses above him. How many divine abilities did these fellows possess? Ling Han was shocked, but his confidence did not suffer a blow, because this was not his full battle prowess, or perhaps his potential, because he still had not used the 9 dragons tyrant body art and the indestructible heaven scroll. These did not conflict, and could be used at the same time. Especially the indestructible heaven scroll, which was a scripture inherited from the Black Tower. Forget it, he didn't have to fight for first place in history. Ling Han took a few steps back, smiled at Jia Ming, and said, "Frog at the bottom of a well, have you learned something new?" 78 versus 97. Naturally, it was an absolute suppression. Get out of my way. Jia Ming walked over and placed his right hand on the martial arts stone again. I didn't even use my full strength just now. What? Everyone was shocked. Was this for real? To be able to squeeze into the top 100 in history, and not to use his full strength, just how abnormal was this guy? Was he going to defy the heavens? Jia Ming stood solemnly without moving, but his head of black hair stood on end and shot towards the sky. It was as if there was a gust of wind blowing from below, each strand dancing in the wind. Behind his back, the shadow of that giant snake appeared again, but it was evolving. The flat and sharp head of the snake became round and solid, as if it had become an earthworm. This was not a normal earthworm, but rather a divine beast from the beginning of the world, emitting an ancient and desolate aura. The veins on his forehead continuously throbbed, and every muscle was trembling. The strength of his physical body was terrifying, as if a light punch could shatter a tall mountain, overturn the sea, and even strike down the stars in the sky. Wang, the black light on the martial arts stone reappeared, but this time, the two words "leave behind" did not appear, but directly raised Jia Ming's name from 97 to 51. What kind of secret technique did he use that actually allowed him to surpass another 50 ancient geniuses? Don't say it was only 50, but that was the accumulation of how many years and how many generations of geniuses. What he had surpassed was one era after another. Everyone's scalp went numb. What kind of freak was this? But those 50 names that were higher than Jia Ming's were even more terrifying. These people's names hadn't changed even after thousands of years, so how powerful were they back then? Even Ling Han was a bit speechless. In other words, as long as Jia Ming developed the secret technique he grasped to the extreme, he could even surpass the level of 3 mystical powers. Ha ha ha. Jia Ming let go of his hand and retreated a few steps, casting a disdainful glance at Ling Han. Now, who's the frog at the bottom of the well? Picking up from others' mouths, lacking in creativity. Ling Han shook his head. You think you're the only one who can hide a trick like a toad? Get out of the way, this time I'll make you completely convinced. Jia Ming's body couldn't help but tremble. Could it be that Ling Han also held back? Impossible, impossible, charging all the way to 78 in one go, how could he possibly hold back? He must be deliberately mystifying things, definitely. Ling Han stretched out his hand and pressed it on the martial arts stone, activating the indestructible heaven scroll. There was only this one secret technique. Hung, a black light immediately shone, and Ling Han's ranking soared all the way up. 60, 50, 40, 30, as fast as a cannon shooting through the sky. Even Ling Han himself was shocked, because he'd only activated a portion of the indestructible heaven scroll, and hadn't completed it at all. Moreover, he'd only grasped the first layer of the indestructible heaven scroll. 20, 10, 9, 8, 7, 3, 2, 1. He directly reached first place, suppressing the first place that was ranked first. Unprecedented since ancient times, #1 in the world. Fuck, motherfuck, everyone burst into expletives, completely unable to believe it. This was too shocking, directly crushing all geniuses since ancient times, occupying first place. Could it be that Ling Han could possibly become the person with the strongest battle prowess in the history of the vast lands? Ling Han didn't continue to circulate the indestructible heaven scroll. Since he'd already charged to first place, there was no meaning in continuing. He retracted his hand, smiled, and said, sorry, I've always been a low-key person, and suddenly being high-profile for a bit, I don't feel good. Everyone was speechless. Although this sounded fake no matter how they heard it, Ling Han's potential was there for all to see. As long as he could really develop the secret technique he'd grasped to the extreme, his battle prowess would be the strongest in history. The eyes of the women present all lit up. #1 in history, who wouldn't want to become the wife of the #1 in history? Such a title was similarly filled with temptation. Jia Ming's expression was livid. He'd originally wanted to completely suppress Ling Han, but who would have thought that he'd instead help Ling Han, becoming the latter's stepping stone. After all, without him as a comparison, who knew how valuable the first place was? Now it was clear that even if he staked his all, he'd only be ranked 51st, a few streets behind Ling Han. Chapter 721. Jia Ming immediately calmed his mind. This was only the height Ling Han might reach in the future, and it didn't mean that his current battle prowess was inferior to Ling Han's. On the contrary, he had a fortuitous encounter in the sea, and his cultivation soared straight to the deity transformation tier. His current battle prowess definitely crushed Ling Han's. As long as he got the chance, he'd definitely kill him. Niu wants to come too, Niu wants to come too. Hu Niu ran over, giggling. It was very fun for her to come. Ha 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 ha. Some people immediately laughed loudly. A little girl, what was she doing joining in the fun? Don't underestimate her. She entered the Restore Heaven Academy with her own strength, and even defeated many experts. Someone knew of Hunyo's background. Pooh, this instantly made more people spurt out. She was a 7 or 8-year-old little girl. Was it possible? Just a little girl, what's she doing joining in the fun? Get out of my way. An old man was displeased, and directly blocked her way. He tolerated it before, but a little girl also wanted to cut the line. He couldn't tolerate it. You dare block Nyo's way. Hunyo was furious, and her small fist immediately shot out. Send you flying. Little girl, you dare to be impudent in front of me. The old man moved, grabbing towards Hunyo's neck. He wanted to throw Hunyo flying. However, Hunyo's figure flashed, and immediately disappeared from under his hand. When she reappeared, she was already behind him, and raised her foot to kick. Peng, the old man was kicked flying magnificently out of the crowd and landing on the yellow sand outside. Damn it! The old man couldn't hold his face anymore. He was actually kicked in the butt by a little girl in public. How would he have the face to see others in the future? He immediately charged back, but before he could attack, he was caught by the metal puppet like an eagle catching a chick, unable to fight back at all. He hurriedly struggled, and shouted, "Why did you only catch me?" That's right, everyone also wanted to ask. Fighting was forbidden here, and whoever attacked would be immediately stopped by the metal puppet. But now, it was obviously Hunyo who attacked first, so why didn't the puppet stop her, and instead restrain the victim? Hunyo glared, and said, "Big monster, you dare to catch Nyo." The metal puppet actually took a step back, as if it was afraid. Everyone wanted to hug their heads and shout. How could this be possible? This was a puppet, an existence that could not feel anything at all. It did not know fear at all, so why would it feel fear towards Hunyo? Hunyo laughed loudly, and with her hands on her hips, she walked to the front of the martial arts stone. Just as she stretched out her small hand, she was greatly annoyed, and said angrily, "Damn it, it's too high." She had to stand on her tiptoes and stretch out her arms to reach it. Everyone couldn't help but smile. This little girl was quite cheerful. Hunyo directly jumped onto the martial arts stone. In everyone's eyes, this was very disrespectful, as the name of a prodigy of all ages was left on it. But even the metal puppet didn't react, so why would they be excited? Hunyo placed her small hand on the stone tablet, but there was no reaction. Not to mention black light, not even purple light appeared. She was furious and said, "This broken stone is broken." Ling Han laughed heartily and said, "Treat this rock as an enemy, and then think about how to destroy it in your mind." So that's how it is. Hunyo giggled and closed her eyes. Her small mouth moved and moved, looking like she was gnashing her teeth. Wang, the martial arts stone immediately shone, and black light rose directly, turning into 2 words, "Leave a name." Fuck, another freak that could leave a name on the ranking. What was going on? There were already 2 freaks, and one was directly ranked first since ancient times, and now a little girl of 7 or 8 years old could also enter the ranking. Such a little girl, what kind of secret technique could she grasp? AI, these people also dared to call themselves geniuses. They couldn't even compare to a little girl. Hunyo began to write crookedly on the stone tablet, leaving behind the words, "Ling Han is Nyo's." She giggled and took a few steps back in satisfaction, admiring her masterpiece, and said, "Ling Han, is Nyo's handwriting beautiful?" "Beautiful as if dancing," Ling Han said with a smile. The black light faded, and everyone immediately began to search. What rank could this Ling Han is Nyo's rank? They all began to search from the last place, but the top 90, no top 80, no top 70, no, couldn't reach these words all the way. "You guys in the first row," someone said in a trembling voice. Everyone went to the first row of the stone tablet, and saw that Ling Han is Nyo's was impressively first, squeezing down Ling Han who just rose to first place. The original, first, now fell to third place, appearing a bit embarrassed. Originally, first, ranked first, which was extremely domineering, and now ranked third, although it was still rare since ancient times, it didn't live up to its name, and became a joke. However, everyone looked back and forth between Hunyo and the name on the stone tablet, unable to connect this ancient number 1 battle prowess with this little girl. They were still in the shock of Ling Han breaking history and becoming the history's number 1 battle prowess, and before the shock faded, another shock came again, making them a bit numb. Was this a dream? It was too surreal. Okay, Nyo is first. Hunyo cried out excitedly. Jia Ming's face turned green. It was fine if he couldn't compare to Ling Han, but even a little girl's future battle prowess was above his. How could he accept this? His confidence was about to be crushed, this was too much of a blow. Ling Han, however, wasn't surprised at all. Hunyo's body most likely hid an extremely terrifying existence. So what if it crushed an ancient genius? He didn't fully circulate the indestructible heaven scroll, so being surpassed by Hunyo was normal. He obviously wouldn't fight with Hunyo, and said with a smile, "Let's go, ignore that toad and go in." Okay. Hunyo grabbed Ling Han's hand, and the two, one big and one small, walked into the tool pavilion. The metal puppet automatically stepped aside as if to express respect. Zhu Xian'er and Yuan Chenghe followed behind, both feeling that there was light on their faces and extremely proud. This made everyone click their tongues in wonder, because those who passed the exam before all walked around it. Could this be a special treatment for those who left their names on the list? Brother Ling. Wenren Qian hurriedly chased after, her beautiful eyes shining. This time, she really wanted to get to know and interact with Ling Han. The first person since ancient times, no, the first two since ancient times. Jia Ming snorted coldly and walked towards the tool pavilion's door, also wanting to enter grandly, but the puppet blocked him, not having the slightest intention of giving way. This almost made Jia Ming explode in anger. Why was everyone on the list, but he didn't have special treatment? He could only walk around, his face livid. Too fucking bullying. Chapter 722. After entering the Alchemy Pavilion, they saw that they were in a great hall, and there were stairs on both sides that led to the second floor. From the height of the first floor, this tool pavilion should be 5 floors high. What weapon do you use? A voice sounded by Ling Han's ear. Huh? Ling Han was startled, and said to everyone, "Did you all hear that voice?" "Yes, he asked me what weapon I use," everyone said. Ling Han nodded, and said, "Sword, Xiao." Just as he finished speaking, his figure disappeared from the great hall, and appeared in a sealed room. The door was tightly shut, obviously, he was directly transported in. For that ancient dynasty, this kind of method wasn't rare. Ling Han did not panic either. Now that they were here, everyone had been teleported to different rooms due to the different weapons they used. However, why didn't those who used swords appear together? This might have something to do with their previous results. The better the results, the higher the level of the room they might enter. He swept his eyes around, and saw that this was a stone room. It was completely empty, and in the middle was a stone table. On the table was a sword with a scabbard attached. Even if the sword didn't leave its scabbard, Ling Han could already feel that terrifying and ruthless aura coming at him, filled with killing intent. A sword user, a weapon of murder. Ling Han was shocked. It wasn't that he hadn't seen treasured swords before, and he even had a 10th-tier spirit tool in his possession, but in terms of ruthless aura, the demon birth sword was far inferior to this one. It was as if this sword was born to kill. Ling Han walked over, but when he was still 3 meters away, this sword actually ejected itself from its scabbard, and was only about a foot away. Wang, 7 flashes of sword light intertwined, charging towards him. The power of these sword lights was at the spiritual infant tier, the same tier as him. Ling Han was naturally unafraid, and crossed his arms in front of him, taking this attack head-on. Pooh! His body was forced back 7 steps, and there were 7 scars on his arm, with dark red blood gushing out. Ling Han couldn't help but be greatly shocked. What kind of physique did he have? It was comparable to 8th tier rare metal, and theoretically, even deity transformation tier attacks would find it very, very difficult to cause him any harm, but these merely 7 spiritual infant tier sword lights made him bleed. Wasn't it shocking? Strength did not represent battle prowess, nor did it represent destructive power. Ling Han was very clear about this. For example, if you use the same amount of force to hit a piece of wood with an iron rod, will the damage be the same as if you use an axe to chop it? Strength only played a part of the role. Ling Han smiled. If he wanted to obtain this sword, would he have to conquer it first? Interesting. He was in the spiritual infant tier, so this sword could only unleash the power of the spiritual infant tier, battling against him in the same tier. However, battle prowess was not certain. This sword light was full of destructive power, and if his physique was still in the iron sheet tier, that hit just now would definitely cut off his arm, and even his whole body would be cut open. Like him, in the spiritual infant tier, yet able to kill deity transformation tier warriors, haha, a battle at the same cultivation level? Then let's have a spar. Ling Han charged over. He was very interested in this sword. Could it be that it was also a level 10 spirit tool? It could actually deliver such a sharp sword light. Shio, 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 sword lights shot out one after another, slashing towards him. Ling Han swung his fist to block. This sword light was truly sharp, its power reaching the peak of the spiritual infant tier, and its destructive power far exceeded that, even causing damage to his physique. However, that was all. He cultivated the indestructible heaven scroll, and his physique was as indestructible as steel. He focused his eyes on the sword. There were many patterns on the sword, but they weren't martial art intent, but formation patterns. Although his formation level didn't improve much, it wasn't difficult to make such a judgment. This wasn't a spirit tool, but a formation's eye. Ling Han was truly shocked this time. Could it be that this sword was a formation, and was now actively attacking him? Pu, 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 blood continuously flashed on Ling Han's body. This formation sword was truly too terrifying, slashing to the point that he couldn't get close, and blood flowed continuously. If he couldn't get close, how could he collect it? He operated the thunderclap 9th heaven and used the demon fairy step, no longer clashing head-on with the sword light. There was no result. In terms of power, this sword had the advantage, and he could only be pushed back. Shio, 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 sword light shot out in all directions, but Ling Han moved freely, shuttling through the gaps of the sword light, constantly approaching. Just when Ling Han was only 1 step away from this sword, the sword leaped and completely popped out of the scabbard. Instantly, a grand light soared into the sky, its murderous aura blazing. 49 sword lights shot out at the same time, interweaving into a secret net, once again forcing Ling Han back. Obviously, under Ling Han's pressure, this sword also blossomed with stronger might. Its power was still at the spiritual infant tier, but its destructive power increased by a large margin. Ling Han's arm was slashed once again, and this time, it was much deeper, almost touching his bones. This sword floated in the air as if controlled by an invisible hand. The tip of the sword pointed straight at Ling Han, emitting a threatening chill. What level of formation pattern is this? Ling Han stared at the formation pattern on the sword. He completely couldn't recognize what kind of formation this was, and could only be sure of 2 things. First, its power was terrifyingly great, and if it exploded with full power, it could probably cut down shattering void tier elites. Second, this formation still had flaws, and wasn't complete. Too shocking, an incomplete formation had such power, and if it was completed, how terrifying would it be? I can't subdue you. Ling Han's arrogance rose, and he unleashed the demon birth sword. He didn't awaken the martial art intent within, but instead used the mysterious 3000 to counterattack that sword. Awakening the demon birth sword's martial art intent, Ling Han was afraid that both would activate on their own, and then he would become a decoration. Moreover, the demon birth sword might not be able to suppress this formation sword, and if it was suppressed instead, it would be disastrous. As expected, the demon birth sword didn't unleash its might, and the formation sword still maintained the power of the spiritual infant tier, but the sword light's destructive power was truly terrifying. Ling Han estimated that if all the students of the Restore Heaven Academy attacked together, they would also be cut down by this sword. Ling Han's battle prowess was fully unleashed, and the Eye of Truth and Thunderclap Ninth Heaven were both activated. His physical strength was also unleashed to the extreme, and his battle prowess exploded. This had long surpassed the spiritual infant tier, and could even cut down peak stage deity transformation tier warriors, but against this sword, it was still on par. No, to be precise, it should be Ling Han who was slightly at a disadvantage. After all, this sword suppressed its tier to fight him, and had an innate advantage. Ling Han didn't believe it. Moreover, the stronger this sword was, the more he wanted to obtain it. His right hand operated the demon birth sword to slash at the sword light, and he also used the dismantle technique, swinging it left and right to dissipate the power in the sword light. His figure continued to charge out, and even if he had to endure the bombardment of a few flashes of sword light, he still wanted to grab this sword in his hands. As long as there was no tool spirit, he could put the sword in the Black Tower, and suppressing it would be easy. Chapter 723. Ling Han didn't care whether Shui Yanyu agreed or not. He directly retrieved a mountain river stone and extracted its essence. Of course, this wasn't the special mountain river stone that he had just obtained. Rather, it was from the group of 7 that he had killed. There were 2 pieces in total, and he hadn't refined them because he had been in a hurry. When they saw that Ling Han was refining a mountain river stone in front of everyone, the others almost became enraged, and wanted to rush over to snatch it. Fortunately, when they realized that this was only an ordinary mountain river stone, they finally managed to restrain themselves. Ordinary mountain river stones could only save a cultivator's cultivation time. Although they were extremely precious, prodigies didn't lack this bit of time. Only mountain river stones with special attributes were precious treasures that could truly increase their battle prowess. Being wary of Ling Han's battle prowess was one thing, and the other was because of Hu Feiyun. She was the 9th king. When they thought of how much the Empress of the Chaotic Star's majestic empire doted on the 9th king, who would dare to be disrespectful to the 9th king? Putting aside the fact that the people of the Chaotic Star's majestic empire didn't dare to touch the 9th king, even the people of the Eternity Sky majestic empire and the Jade Drop majestic empire didn't dare to touch the 9th king. In fact, they even had to risk their lives to save the 9th king when she was in danger. This was because everyone knew that if the 9th king died here, the Empress of the Chaotic Star's majestic empire would definitely fly into a rage. She wouldn't hesitate to kill everyone here to accompany the 9th king in death. There was no doubt that the Empress of the Chaotic Star's majestic empire would do such a thing. Shui Yanyu wasn't stupid. Normally, she wouldn't be able to see Hu Feiyun. Now that there was such a good opportunity, she naturally wanted to befriend Hu Feiyun. That naive king of the Chaotic Star's majestic empire was innocent and naive, so how could she know the dangers of the world? In just a few words, she was already chatting happily with Shui Yanyu. Ling Han was very carefree, and he cultivated right in front of everyone's eyes. In the eyes of others, this would be crazy and rash, but Ling Han was very relaxed. This was because no one knew that his physique had already reached the level of level 2 godly metal. Who here could harm him? Even if they summoned their divine flames, they would still have to refine him for a few days, right? Even if it was extremely poisonous water, it would still take a long time for the poison to take effect. After all, the special environment here meant that Ling Han was practically invulnerable. In his hand, the mountain river stone was currently dimming, and his mountain was rapidly strengthening. The lower the cultivation level, the faster the improvement. When this mountain river stone dimmed, and when it turned into dust with a light grip, the first mountain and river in Ling Han's dantian had also increased in size by 100 times. Now, it finally looked a little like a mountain. I'm almost at the middle stage of the low extreme. But this mountain and river was clearly about to completely take shape, and was about to condense into a river next, so why was it still so small? Could it be that this was related to him relying on the mountain river stone to advance? Forget it, I don't care anymore. As long as their battle prowess is the same, it's fine. Ling Han stood up, and crossed the river again. This time, he charged all the way to the 60th step in a single breath, and only then did his speed slow down. After his cultivation level advanced, his improvement was indeed obvious. But when he reached the 90th step, he once again felt powerless. He forced himself to take a step forward, yet fell into the river with a plop. Ha ha ha. Some people immediately laughed loudly, wanting nothing more than to clap. But immediately, expressions of shock appeared on their faces. That was because Ling Han was actually waving his arms, and swimming towards the island. Monster, definitely a monster. It wasn't that no one had thought, since I've already walked halfway, why not swim forward? Instead, the distance would be closer. Because this was even more difficult, and more than 100 times more difficult. Swimming back was very simple. Aside from the corrosion of the lake water, there was not the slightest bit of resistance, but if one wanted to advance, aside from the threat of the lake water, there was also a terrifying resistance. This was because the gravity had changed direction, and was pushing in from the direction of the island. Moreover, there was no place to exert force in the water, so it was naturally even more difficult to advance. It could be said that if one swam forward, aside from being corroded by the lake water for nothing, it would be difficult to advance even an inch. But though Ling Han could not advance, his body was not corroded either. This was too shocking. What kind of physique could withstand the corrosion of the lake water? Ling Han swam for a while, and could only helplessly retreat. This time, it was easy, and he immediately swam to the shore. The clothes on his body had already turned into threads, and were falling off, but the skin all over his body was exuding divine light, and he was completely unharmed. Ling Han drew out a piece of clothing and quickly put it on. Being able to withstand the corrosive power of the lake water was not only because of the strength of his physique, but also because he had circulated the indestructible heaven scroll, which made him impervious to all techniques, so what could a mere corrosive water amount to? Huh? Haven't you two seen me before? Why are your gazes so strange? Ling Han asked with a smile. At this moment, Shui Yanyu and Hu Feiyun's eyes were almost wide open. How could they not be shocked? The corrosive power of the Crimson Lake was publicly acknowledged to be terrifying, and anyone who fell into it would lose a layer of skin. Yet, it was as if Ling Han had swum a lap in clear water. This was absolutely terrifying. Even those old men from before were trembling in their hearts, thinking that it was fortunate that they had not come into conflict with Ling Han just then. This guy's physique was so terrifying, so who could wound him? Ling Han sat down again, and drew out the last ordinary mountain river stone. After refining this stone, he should be able to reach the island. He did not hesitate, and immediately began to refine this mountain river stone. Less than half a day later, the mountain river stone in his hand once again turned into powder. During this time, there were naturally many more people who arrived, and there were also some who left in despair. The physique that Ling Han had displayed was far too terrifying, and it caused the majority of people to lose hope. However, a prodigy from the Eternity Sky Nation had arrived this time. His cultivation level was at the peak stage of the low extreme, and he was more so a 3-star genius. After expending a tremendous amount of effort, he also obtained a super-gravity mountain river stone. From this, it could be seen that battle prowess wasn't the most important factor in reaching the island. There were many people more powerful than him, yet at present, only he and Ling Han had succeeded. It could be seen that strength was the true path. That person was called Yu Hao, and not only was he extremely powerful, but he also had two old men protecting him. Both of them possessed incredible battle prowess, and no one dared to move recklessly. Previously, there had been over 20 such old monsters, yet almost all of them had left not long ago. There were only 7 of them left, and they didn't have absolute confidence that they could win. Thus, they naturally didn't dare to rashly battle. Yu Hao laughed loudly as he looked around, appearing to be incredibly smug. Who didn't know that those who could reach the island were truly powerful? There were only a mere 10 or so people each time, and this wasn't something that those old monsters and secret techniques could accomplish. This was an extreme test of strength. Congratulations, young master. Congratulations, young master. The 2 old servants were filled with joy as they congratulated Yu Hao. Yu Hao was extremely smug, yet a strange expression soon appeared on his face. This was because there were naturally some people who were dumbstruck by this scene, yet there were also many people who wore calm expressions. It was as if they hadn't seen his magnificent feat at all. Were they blind? How could he know that Ling Han had already succeeded once before? Although he hadn't succeeded the second time, it was even more astonishing than the first time he had succeeded. He had finally reached the end of the middle stage of the low extreme, and he was only a sliver away from being able to condense a river. This was the boundary between the middle stage and the late stage. Yu Hao couldn't help but chuckle coldly upon seeing this. He had just successfully reached the island, yet Ling Han was trying to follow suit. What a joke! Pay! Overestimating his own abilities. Chapter 724. In Ling Han's heart, there was a continuous stream of comprehension, which made him unable to contain his joy. He was definitely an extremely intelligent person. The fact that he could become the Alchemy Emperor in his last life was proof of that. Moreover, this was on the basis that he did not have the guidance of anyone, yet he could still obtain such achievements in alchemy. Wasn't it shocking? Now, he put this kind of comprehension ability into martial art, wholeheartedly pursuing the pinnacle of martial art. Inside his body, there was an earth-shattering change happening. It could be hard and soft at the same time, combining hard and soft. This was something that could be said with a flip of the lips, but it was really difficult to achieve. Because everyone was already used to their current state, but habits were very difficult to break. Moreover, to make the body stretch like the blood-sucking origin gold and have elasticity, this was a kind of qualitative change. Break oneself, reinvent oneself. In his dantian, the spiritual infant sat on guard, solemn and dignified, forming one mysterious seal after another. The indestructible heaven scroll had long since been branded on it, and now the spiritual infant was developing the secret technique, coordinating from the inside and promoting the change in Ling Han. After an unknown amount of time, Ling Han stretched out the index finger of his right hand, grabbed it with his left hand, and suddenly pulled. If it was in the past, under his strong pull, his right arm would definitely be stretched out, but now, a strange thing happened. His finger actually became thinner, and the pulling force was mostly dissipated. However, after the index finger was stretched to a foot long, it could not be stretched any further. This was the limit. A smile involuntarily appeared on Ling Han's lips. Success, he finally succeeded. Although it was far from the level of the blood-sucking origin gold that could change as he pleased, it was still an improvement, a very big improvement. Again. Ling Han was not just sitting, he continuously waved his hands and kicked. At first, it was very normal, but slowly, the distance of his punches and kicks was actually getting farther and farther. That was his body stretching. Ling Han's eyes lit up. This was not as simple as dispersing the force, but it could also give rise to a completely different battle style. Others thought that one punch could only reach this far before being able to spit out origin power, but in reality, one could punch several times the distance. Naturally, one could not guard against it. Moreover, if his fists and feet could stretch endlessly, then wouldn't any battle become a close-range battle? One had to know that he cultivated a body art, and his physique was comparable to rare metals that were one tier higher. His brute force was also very terrifying. With these two added together, who could fight him in close range? However, Ling Han immediately discovered his limitations. Without being affected by external forces, the distance he could extend his body was limited. It was like a spring. In theory, it could be stretched very, very long, but it must be under the influence of an external force. Moreover, when the external force disappeared, it would return to its original state unless it was broken. Ling Han's original state was the most stable, so no matter how he changed, his body would instinctively and diligently return to this state. What a pity! Ling Han shook his head in his heart. If his body could change under his control like the blood-sucking origin gold, then he would be able to develop a completely different style of battle, killing everyone until they were dumbfounded. He couldn't ask for too much. Ling Han smiled. By now, he had already achieved a small level of success. He went to battle that formation sword again. Ling Han exited the Black Tower. Fortunately, the formation sword didn't self-awaken and attack him, or else he would be in trouble. Come, let's fight again. He laughed loudly and charged over. Xiao, 7 flashes of sword light shot out from the formation sword and slashed towards him. Ling Han snorted and continued to charge forward. He didn't even use the demon fairy step, allowing the 7 flashes of sword light to hit him. Now, he wanted to use this sword to sharpen the soft side of the indestructible heaven scroll. Pu. In this way, the 7 flashes of sword light naturally slashed him. The clothes on his chest were instantly torn open, and as the sword light slashed down, Ling Han's chest actually stretched backwards, 10 meters, 20 meters, 15 meters. At this time, the power of the 7 flashes of sword light was finally exhausted. Peng, Ling Han's chest bounced back, and his face was slightly pale. It was one thing to practice by himself, but to play so hard right from the start, he couldn't bear it. 3 bones are still broken, and the internal organs are also slightly injured, he said inwardly. After all, this was a strike from the formation sword, which could be destroyed even if he returned to the deity transformation tier, but he took it head-on, so how could he not pay a price? But what made Ling Han happy was that he didn't retreat an inch this time. He turned his body into countless particles, and the impact of the sword light was all dispersed by his upper body, so the lower half of his body naturally didn't move. He could do it. He surged with strong confidence that he could definitely subdue this treasured sword. Again. The indestructible heaven scroll circulated within his body. The body of diamond was known to be indestructible, and even if it was heavily injured, it could automatically heal. In just a short while, his broken bones had already healed, as if he had never been injured. He continued to attack, but human strength was limited after all. After suffering too many slashes from the sword light, he had no choice but to retreat in the end, or else he would really be split in two. The smile at the corners of Ling Han's mouth grew wider and wider. His understanding of gentleness was becoming deeper and deeper, and every attack was an improvement, and the injuries he suffered were also becoming lighter and lighter. He learned to use more particles in his body to dissolve the power he endured, and it wasn't as simple as pulling himself up, but also expanding to the left and right. Previously, he had only turned himself into a spring, but now he was a ball of dough, and not only could he expand in one direction, but in any direction. Thus, when his chest was once again struck by the sword light, his whole chest could be seen to expand like water, turning into a sheet of paper, extremely thin, yet it was able to disperse at least 90% of the attack it received in this way. At this time, the hard side also showed its power, and a mere 10% of the power wanted to injure his physique. His body bounced back, and returned to its original state. Ling Han's face was slightly pale. This time, he really wasn't injured, but the state he was in earlier wasn't his normal form, causing him great pressure. The transformed form couldn't be maintained for too long, or else it would also collapse. As he thought so, he immediately laughed in spite of himself. If he could endlessly pull himself up, then wouldn't he be able to easily receive even the attacks of shattering void tiralites? There was a limit to one's strength, and this was in line with the Tao of Heaven. He shook his head, his gaze once again fixed on the formation sword, and said with a smile, "Within 3 moves, I will definitely subdue you." Xiao, the thunderclap 9th heaven was unleashed, and he attacked again. Peng, 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 sword light blazed, slashing at him madly. Ling Han was fearless. Every part of his body swelled up, dispersing the attacks he received. He didn't retreat even half a step, and instead stretched out his right hand, forcibly extending a distance of 3 meters. After receiving 3 consecutive rounds of sword light attacks, his hand finally grabbed onto the sword hilt. Hong, a terrifying killing intent instantly attacked Ling Han's consciousness. Chapter 725. This sword was born to kill. The sword was engraved with formation patterns, but it was a killing formation that could shatter the void. Now, the formation patterns turned into sword intent, slashing towards Ling Han's consciousness. Wang, the spirit infant, rose and entered the consciousness, sitting in the center and pointing at the sword intent. Wrapped by the indestructible heaven scroll, it emitted a brilliant golden light, solemn as if the great Tao had arrived. This killing intent was instantly contained, and then began to melt. Indestructible heaven scroll, supreme. This was a part of evolution that allowed him to enter the list of the strongest battle prowess in tens of thousands of years. Even if this formation sword was extremely terrifying and could kill shattering void, it was still helpless against the indestructible heaven scroll. This was a battle at the level of divine sense, unrelated to battle prowess, but a confrontation of quality. Indestructible heaven scroll would be inferior in quality, a joke. The killing intent collapsed, and the formation sword no longer shone, looking like an ordinary sword. Done. Ling Han couldn't help but laugh loudly. He not only obtained a treasured sword, but also made great progress in physical arts. This time, the harvest was huge. He held the formation sword and observed it carefully, extremely interested in the formation patterns on it. But it was too complicated, and he only looked for a while before his head buzzed as if it was about to explode. He hurriedly looked away, and when he thought again, he couldn't help but be aghast because although he looked for a while just now, he couldn't recall a single formation pattern, as if there was a mysterious power that forcibly erased it. Ling Han didn't care about this, and he took the scabbard. However, in comparison, although the scabbard's material was very superior, it couldn't compare to the formation sword at all. The sword's material was 10th tier rare metal, and the formation patterns carved on it might be worth more than 10th tier. As for the scabbard, the material used was only 9th tier, appearing extremely shabby. True, the scabbard couldn't be used for battle, and it would be extremely wasteful to use 10th tier rare metal to forge it. Speaking of which, even if it was forged with 9th tier rare metal, it would still make people feel extremely rich. World's #1 killing sword. Ling Han saw these words on the sword. Was this the name of this formation sword? First in the world again. Don't you think that's a bit too high profile? It's not in line with my personality. He tossed the scabbard into the black tower. This thing was useless now, so why not refine it into an arrow and put it to use? Your murderous aura is so heavy. In the future, I'll call you the Revere Life Sword. Don't kill lightly. There's a reason for all living things to grow. We can't arbitrarily deprive other living beings of their right to live, Ling Han said with a smile. He lightly shook his sword, and the will of martial art surged into it. Wang, a few formation patterns immediately lit up. He slashed out, and instantly, 10 sharp flashes of sword light appeared. Pu, pu, pu. 10 shallow sword marks were left on the surrounding walls. How powerful! Ling Han was left speechless. This stone chamber had been able to withstand the battle between him and the Revere Life Sword without collapsing, which was proof of its sturdiness. But now, a sword mark had appeared on the stone chamber with a single slash, which also proved the fearsomeness of the Revere Life sword. He slashed out again, and this time, the sword light transformed into a waterfall that swept out. Hong, an indentation that was at least a foot deep instantly appeared on the wall. However, what was astonishing was that the wall actually squirmed, and very soon, the sword indentation disappeared. Ling Han was shocked. This tool pavilion actually had the ability to self-recover. Hiss, this tool pavilion itself was a treasure. Ling Han's heart itched. If he could also take this tool pavilion, then wouldn't everything inside be his? It was at this moment that the originally sealed door suddenly opened. He obtained the treasured sword, so there was no reason for him to stay here. Ling Han stored the Revere Life sword into the Black Tower, and it stood side by side with the Demon Birth sword, hovering in the air. However, the Demon Birth sword actually automatically lowered a space, not daring to stand side by side with it, showing the Revere Life sword's domineering nature. Swords had spirits, and could also compare. Ling Han walked out of the stone chamber. In front of him was the staircase. He looked around, and saw that there were still a few stone chambers on this floor, but each one was sealed. He tried to open them, but no matter if it was fists or sword strikes, he couldn't break in. Helpless, he could only go down the stairs. After arriving at the next floor, there were another few stone chambers and a row of stairs. He didn't try to break in, but went straight downstairs. Previously, he was on the 5th floor, so he went down the stairs 4 times in a row before finally returning to the ground floor. He walked out, and saw that there were still many people surrounding that martial arts stone, eager to have a try. Ling Han. Ling Han. Hunyo jumped over and instantly threw herself into his arms, hanging on his neck. Why were you out for so long? Nyo missed you so much. Ling Han didn't know how long he cultivated in the Black Tower, so he asked Zhu Xian, who walked over, how long was I in there? 20 days, Zhu Xian answered. Hiss, so long. Ling Han felt like he only blinked, not even a day had passed, so how did 20 days pass? Did you guys gain anything? He asked with a smile. Yes, yes. Hunyo immediately jumped down from his arms. Nyo got something fun. She suddenly drew out a gigantic pair of scissors that were even taller than herself. They were completely crimson, and when the scissors were closed, they looked very much like a coiled dragon. They were covered in scales, and the pointed end was a dragon's head. They looked very lifelike. Go, the little girl shouted, and the scissors immediately shot out, actually turning into a red dragon, baring its fangs and brandishing its claws, exuding terrifying divine might. Dragon's tooth scissors, Uncle Rabbit learned about it from the hand scissors left behind by the ancient ancestor. It's a true treasure. The rabbit said. Legend has it that a true dragon died in the vast lands, and the dragon's blood scattered, giving birth to countless treasured medicines. The dragon's bones formed mountains, becoming the holy land of the 5 great sects, and some became a world's impasse, with great danger. The only thing that didn't change was a dragon's tooth. A long time ago, a formation master obtained this dragon's tooth and refined it into dragon's tooth scissors. When fully activated, it has the power of a true dragon's bite. Everyone was shocked. Such a treasure was actually obtained by Hunyo. Incredible, incredible, this treasure would even tempt shattering void tier elites. Ling Han smiled slightly. He also obtained the Revere Life sword, and even if he were to go against Su Xiu Ran's absolute saber, he would have the power to contend, and Hunyo also had the dragon's tooth scissors. Their side strength improved greatly again. Zhu Xian, Wenren Qian, and Yuan Cheng He all had gains, but they were only level 8 spirit tools, far from being comparable to Ling Han and Hunyo. As expected, the results of the martial arts stone directly affected their gains. This time, Su Xiu Ran and Dong Ling, who had been hiding their strength, would definitely be depressed to death. The rabbit also obtained a treasure, but wouldn't say anything even if he was beaten to death. making everyone curious. Ling Han didn't find the Rain Emperor and Mu Rongqing, and only after asking Zhu Xian'er did he find out that the two actually came, but left long ago. They now each led a team and became the boss, so their actions had to be coordinated and considered. Ling Han. Jia Ming appeared and stared at Ling Han, his eyes emitting a blood-red glow. Chapter 726. Want to fight? Ling Han said with a smile. He now grasped the path of combining toughness and gentleness, and even if Jia Ming was a tier higher than him, he was fearless. Not fight, kill you, Jia Ming said proudly. So what if the opponent grasped a mystic art more brilliant than him? After all, the tier wasn't up to par, and the mystic art wasn't accomplished, so he could crush him. Then let's fight. Ling Han obviously wasn't afraid to fight. Handsome brother, why fight? At this moment, a sweet voice was heard, and a terrifying aura attacked, making everyone feel as if a rock was pressing down on their chests, so uncomfortable that they wanted to vomit blood. The crowd couldn't help but part, only to see a slender and voluptuous beauty sitting on top of a huge demonic lion. The demonic lion was shockingly majestic, its entire body was covered in dragon scales, and its aura was even more terrifying, as if it could shake the stars in the world with a single roar. In reality, it could indeed do it, because it was a shattering void tier existence. The Lunar King came. Who is this? Her aura is too terrifying, my heart is about to burst. And she's also shockingly beautiful. Your breasts are so big that I definitely can't grasp them with one hand. It'd be great if I could touch them. Pa! Someone looked lecherously at the Lunar King, and unknowingly spat out his thoughts. Instantly, his entire head exploded, and the headless body swayed a few times before crashing down, completely dead. When the others saw it, they were all shocked, looking at the Lunar King with fearful gazes. Because she was the one who extended her slender hand and pointed at that person, obviously the one who killed him. The problem wasn't whether that person was strong or not, but that most people here had very strong backgrounds. Attacking so unscrupulously, weren't you afraid of causing trouble? Only a portion of people knew that this person was a shattering void tier elite, and didn't need to fear anyone in this world. Moreover, daring to speak obscenities to a shattering void tier elite, shouldn't he be killed? Even if he was a true disciple of the Heaven Sword sect and the Absolute Saber sect, he definitely died in vain. How could a shattering void tier be humiliated? The Lunar King rode the beast lion over, and even Jia Ming, who didn't know what reverence was, took a few steps back, unable to match the Lunar King's aura. His future accomplishments were another matter, but at least for now, he could not be compared to the Lunar King at all. You're not allowed to have any ideas about Niu's Ling Han. Hu Niu roared at the Lunar King as she brandished the Dragon Fang scissors. The Lunar King couldn't help but be startled, and said, "You actually obtained the Dragon Fang scissors? How rare. Isn't it said to be unsolvable? Even this king couldn't collect it back then. Pay. If this king wanted to collect it, how could it be possible that I couldn't?" Her beautiful eyes swept over them, and she said, "You've all used the martial arts stone, right? Ha 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 ha, let me tell you, this queen has left her name on the stone tablet, as the 99th in the history of the vast lands." Ling Han and the others snickered inwardly. Now, this lord was removed from the list, and suddenly, three super geniuses, Ling Han, Hu Niu, and Jia Ming, appeared, instantly pushing the Lunar King down. The Lunar King still didn't know about this matter, and seeing everyone's strange expressions, she said, "You guys don't believe me? Kitty, open the way, let them know this king's name." The beast lion was already subdued, and really like a kitten, it carried the Lunar King to the front of the martial arts stone. The Lunar King was immensely proud of herself, and pointed at the martial arts stone, and said, "Back then, only this king and his majesty were on the list. The other 7 kings only triggered a red light, and couldn't compare to this king at all. Where's this king's name?" She stared at the martial arts stone, only to see that her name wasn't on the 99th place, nor was it on the 100th place. After such a long time, there's something wrong with this broken stone, she muttered. No, it was pushed down by someone, Ling Han said. At the beginning, the Lunar King was indeed in the 99th place. What? Who dares to push this king down? The Lunar King was instantly furious. Her gaze searched upwards, and soon stopped on Jia Ming's name. She instantly became murderous, and said, which guy is called Jia Ming? Shua, everyone's gazes focused on Jia Ming at the same time. This was a conditioned reflex. When a shattering void tier elite spoke, people would subconsciously react, and their wills would be influenced. The Lunar King's expression immediately became dangerous, and she cracked her fingers. Good brat, you actually dare to push this king's name down. Tell me, should this king chop you into 3 or 5 pieces? Jia Ming's face turned green. No matter how capable he was, he couldn't challenge a shattering void tier elite, not to mention that she was once on the list, and now even reached the shattering void tier. Her battle prowess had almost reached the peak battle prowess deduced from the martial arts stone. How terrifying was that? Even if the geniuses of the Earth Dragon sect that had been sealed for generations came out together, the strongest among them still couldn't possibly be her match. He forced himself to be confident, and said, Senior, you've cultivated for many years, don't you think bullying a junior like me is beneath your status? The Lunar King's expression instantly became extremely gloomy, and she said, You mean, this king is very old? Former your sister. The Lunar King leaped down from the beast lion's body, and charged over to give Jia Ming a beating. With her strength, she naturally could completely crush Jia Ming, beating him to the point that he didn't want to cry. Ling Han laughed inwardly. The Lunar King was extremely sensitive to her age, and even Ma Duobao, the emperor, wanted to beat her up, yet you actually dared to call her senior, and even specially emphasized the age gap between the two of you. You'd really run into the muzzle of a gun. Jia Ming felt so wronged, but couldn't open his mouth to refute at all. He was beaten black and blue by the Lunar King, feeling that he'd completely become a sandbag, and could only be brutally abused. Only when the Lunar King was satisfied did he cover his face, and mumbled, Senior, not only am I on the list, there's also Ling Han and that little girl, Senior. The Lunar King's anger that she'd finally calmed down with great difficulty came again. How did she look like a senior? Beat again. Peng, peng, peng. After a round of beating, the Lunar King finally clapped her hands, feeling refreshed. She looked towards the martial arts stone, and said, What rank did you two rank, actually surpassing this king? Damn, she reached Ling Han's and Hunyou's names, respectively in the top 2. Jia Ming saw this, and the corners of his mouth couldn't help but reveal a cold smile. He was ranked 51st, and was beaten so miserably. Would the two of them still be alive if they were ranked 1st or 2nd? Ha 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 ha, you guys actually squeezed that egotistical emperor to 3rd. After being startled, the Lunar King suddenly laughed loudly. This king is dying of laughter. That damn fatty thought his battle prowess was unparalleled in the world, and arrogantly gave himself the title of 1st. I never thought that he'd actually be squeezed to 3rd. Wahaha, this king really wants to go back now. What expression does that damn fatty have? I'll definitely make him add soles to this king's shoes. Beautifully done. Chapter 727. I wasn't paying attention. Ling Han hurriedly let go, but the cave was too narrow, and he couldn't shrink his hand back either. He could only move down a little, and press down on Hu Feiyun's lower abdomen. He couldn't move forward. Did he want to be caught by the giant ape? Shui Yanyu was so embarrassed that her ears were red, and her whole body was soft as if she was going to melt into spring water. Was this man fated to be her? Previously, she had almost been stripped naked by him, and he had even bitten her breast. Now, she had been pressed down, hugged, and fondled for so long. He was practically more familiar with her measurements than she was, right? After all, she wouldn't deliberately fondle herself. Pervert. She could only chide him like this. She couldn't let him take advantage of her for nothing, right? It's squeezing me to death. Hu Feiyun was still crying out strangely. Ling Han kept on squeezing backwards, and there was a wall behind her, making it difficult for her to even breathe. Thankfully, this demonic ape doesn't seem to have any technique to shrink. Otherwise, if it wanted to come in, it would really be like catching a turtle in a jar, Ling Han said. Of course, if this demonic ape really shrunk and chased them in, he also had the Black Tower. However, Hu Feiyun probably wouldn't be able to be stored in it. Either she would be eaten by the demonic ape, or Empress Luan Xing would come out to rescue her. After the giant ape dug for a while, it retracted its finger. However, before Ling Han and the others could breathe a sigh of relief, it started digging again, as if it was determined to capture Ling Han and the others. Isn't it just eating 3 mouthfuls less? Is there a need to be so obsessed with it? Ling Han said, shaking his head. Glutton. Hu Feiyun rebuked righteously. After a while, the giant ape stopped digging. However, Ling Han and the others didn't dare to be careless. Otherwise, if the giant ape suddenly started digging again, they would be in trouble. However, this time, the giant ape seemed to have left, or perhaps it was deliberately lulling the 3 of them. It actually didn't make another move even after a long time. Inside the cave, it was completely silent. Though it was very dark here, Ling Han and the others were all elites of the immortal level, so they had no problem seeing in the dark. Ling Han was slightly embarrassed. Because the danger had been alleviated, his thoughts couldn't help but be distracted. There was a beautiful body leaning against his back, and in his arms was similarly a stunningly seductive beauty. Moreover, because Hu Feiyun couldn't breathe, she kept on twisting her body, causing Ling Han to suffer even more torment. How could she test his willpower like this? Everything about Ling Han's body was very normal. Moreover, Helian Xuanxue had left for more than 2 years, and he had preserved his chastity all this time, so his heat was naturally more exuberant. His self-control was very strong, but the reaction of his body was another matter. At the beginning, Shui Yenyu only felt uncomfortable, as if there was something hard pressing against her, but no matter how inexperienced she was still a woman. There were many things that she could learn without a teacher, and didn't need to be taught. She came to her senses, and was instantly embarrassed and annoyed. This pervert, this shameless bastard, he actually had perverted ideas about her at this time. This was really an injustice to Ling Han. He indeed didn't have any perverted ideas in his mind. It was just that he had 2 beauties in his arms, and there were 2 of them, so if he wasn't perverted, he would either be a eunuch or a homosexual. He only had a slight reaction, and didn't make a move. That was really because Ling Han's self-control was astonishing. Pervert, I'm going to kill you. Shui Yenyu said through gritted teeth. Big sister Shui, what did he do to you? Hu Feiyun asked curiously. How could Shui Yenyu have the nerve to say it? She only humphed, and said, this guy isn't a good person. Hu Feiyun found this strange. Ling Han was a good person. He had saved her previously, and just then, he had also disregarded his own safety. Where could she find such a good person? Yet Ling Han was annoyed. I didn't do anything to you. In the present situation, he had only had a slight instinctive reaction. Who asked him to be a man? He moved closer to Shui Yenyu's ear, and said, if you scold me again, be careful that I won't be polite to you. Damn pervert, you have done evil things, and you still don't allow others to talk about it. Woo! Shui Yenyu was just about to scold him sternly, yet unexpectedly, Ling Han had already bitten her earlobe. Suddenly, a numb feeling spread through her whole body, causing her mind to become blank. She had completely lost all her thoughts. Peng! The giant ape's claws once again reached in, and a strong gust of wind swept out, causing her to suddenly come to her senses. Evil thief! She scolded again. Yo, you've learned a new phrase. Ling Han laughed loudly. Since I've already been scolded by you as a pervert and evil thief, then I might as well give you the word pervert. He moved the large hand that had moved down, and pressed it back up, once again gripping that voluptuous mound. Shui Yenyu's whole body instantly stiffened, and her brain instantly stopped working. Your reaction is still so strong. Ling Han murmured. She already knew the secret that he possessed a spatial god tool, so there were only two choices: he could either kill her, or become one of them, and guarantee that the secret would not be leaked. He decided to choose the second option. The giant ape was still wreaking havoc, and Hu Feiyun was still completely confused. However, it was as if Ling Han and Shui Yenyu were on top of the clouds, and it was as if the danger had disappeared. There was only that surging feeling circulating in their bodies. It was unknown how much time had passed, but the two of them did not realize that the giant ape had not come to harass them for a very, very long time. Only when Hu Feiyun repeatedly shouted that she could not bear it anymore did they finally come to their senses. Ling Han said, "I'll go out, the two of you stay here." He channeled his origin power, and his whole body crackled. His body changed shape, and he squeezed past Shui Yenyu to the front, and carefully exited the cave. Shui Yenyu bit her lip. She did not need to look in the mirror to know that her beautiful face had to be astonishingly red. That was because she could feel those waves of heat, as if they were about to burn up. She actually tolerated that guy's frivolity, and was even a little enjoying it. This was really too shameful. Come out, that demonic ape has left. Ling Han's voice traveled over from outside. Hu Feiyun nudged Shui Yenyu, and only then did Shui Yenyu come back to her senses, and stride forward. After exiting the cave, she buried her head very low, not daring to look at Ling Han at all. What happened to big sister Shui? Hu Feiyun was confused. Stayed too long in the cave, and twisted my neck, Ling Han casually made up a story. Yet Hu Feiyun did not doubt him, and hurriedly asked Shui Yenyu, "Big sister Shui, is it very serious?" Shui Yenyu raised her head, and glared fiercely at Ling Han. Then, she said to Hu Feiyun, "I'm fine." That's great. Hu Feiyun clapped her hands. This ninth king was really kind. However, in the world of cultivation, and in the whirlpool of power, her kindness would only bring disaster to herself. Fortunately, with Empress Luan Xing shielding her from the wind and rain, no one would dare to have any ideas about her. Let's continue forward. After determining the direction, they continued to walk towards the flame cave. After walking for 2 days, they stopped to rest. Hu Feiyun was spoiled, and could not endure hardship at all. Ling Han started a fire to cook. After entering into the mystery realm, he had not had the time to refine the spiritual meat. Otherwise, if he had also cultivated the 9 dragons tyrant body art to the immortal level, his power could still increase by a level, and there was hope that his power could break through to the height of 5 stars. This did not improve the Thunderclap 9th Heaven and the 3 styles of Black Origin, because those were both activated using origin power. However, the might of the ultimate arrow could increase by a level, and there was hope that his battle prowess could break through to the level of a 7-star genius in a head-on battle. Chapter 728. Ling Han couldn't help but find it funny. Fatima really wasn't modest, claiming to be the best, and even the sword he refined was the best in the world. He weighed the sword in his hand, and said, "This sword isn't bad." Of course this sword isn't bad. It's not made from ordinary 10th tier rare metal, but with a small amount of godly metal as the base, and then adding in a large amount of 10th tier rare metal, refined in every way, finally forming a tool embryo, the Lunar King said. Not to mention that His Majesty even carved on it. Anyway, if it weren't for the fact that I don't use swords, I'd definitely snatch it. Ling Han was curious, and said, "What kind of array is the pattern on it?" "Ha, just go ask that damn fatty yourself." The Lunar King spread out her hands, unwilling to speak clearly. Ling Han thought that Fatty Ma should be an array expert, using arrays as a supplement, so his battle prowess could suppress all geniuses since ancient times, and rank first. It was just how high did he reach in the path of arrays for him to be this strong? Since Tai Chi Star can't be taken back, this king has no interest in this place, the Lunar King said. This king can't be bothered to waste time, and has to dig out the other 4 kings as soon as possible. When the time comes, the 8 kings will appear together, and just thinking about it makes this king excited. Let's go. She rode on the demonic lion and left. Such a huge treasure trove, yet she actually didn't care at all. This was truly free and easy, and also showed her confidence. She didn't care at all about things that were regarded as treasures by others. Youngster, this is for you. The Lunar King tossed something over. Ling Han caught it, and saw that it was a crystal. He probed it with his divine sense, and when, a map immediately appeared in his mind. It was 3-dimensional, and every place could be infinitely magnified, down to the details. This was the map of this mystery realm. Ling Han immediately recognized it. At first, it was a huge plain, then the sea, then plains, and desert, completely matching the places he had passed before. There were markings on the map. The area in front of him was the Beast Garden, which he already knew. The area he was in now was the Tool region. It was originally a huge land of flames, but following the decline of the Purple Moon Empire, the flames burned everything, turning the land into a desert. After that was the Herb Garden, where many spiritual herbs were planted. Behind the Herb Garden was the Imperial Palace of the Purple Moon Dynasty. There was a Langya library there, which contained many secret skills that the dynasty had collected back then. The Lunar King even specially marked a line of words, Earth Overturning Seal. It's a magical power. Ling Han couldn't help but feel a rush of excitement. He had already mastered 3 divine abilities and was deeply aware of how powerful divine abilities were. Naturally, he wouldn't mind learning another divine ability. Although it is said that biting off more than one can chew, there is also a saying that more skills is not a burden. If it wasn't suitable for him, he didn't need to spend too much time and energy studying it. Ling Han withdrew his divine sense and said, let's go too. He wanted to go to the herb garden. For at least 200,000 years, how prosperous would the herb garden be? You still want to leave? Jia Ming snorted. His cold gaze swept over, not concealing his killing intent at all. Ling Han gave an "oh," and said with a smile, I forgot about you. Don't blame me, don't blame me. With your current appearance, I really can't recognize you. Cheap mouth. Jia Ming stared at him, and said, dare to fight? TSK, TSK, TSK. Deity Transformation Tier Cultivation asking me if I dare to fight, aren't you embarrassed? Ling Han said with a smile. Jia Ming snorted coldly, and said, my age is similar to yours, and your tier is inferior to mine. That's because you're too useless, who can you blame? Ling Han chuckled. Indeed, a battle of the same age, or a battle of the same tier, could be considered fair. However, geniuses at their age really couldn't afford a 1 or 2 year difference. For example, Ling Han had the confidence to cross into the deity transformation tier before the age of 20, and by the time he was the same age as Jia Ming, he might already be in the heaven tier. There was no absolute fairness in this world. If I don't fight with you, you won't give up. Then let's fight. Ling Han walked into the desert, and turned around to face Jia Ming. The latter had long since left the Tool Pavilion, but had been waiting for him all this time, obviously expressing a kind of determination that he wouldn't give up until he got rid of him. Jia Ming sneered. He took out 2 curved blades that were crescent-shaped. The blades were very short, and when held in his hands, it was as if sharp horns grew on his fists. It didn't affect his punches, but instead provided destructive power. Was this the spirit tool he obtained in the Tool Pavilion? He was also on the list, and although he wasn't as shocking as Ling Han and Hun Yo, the treasures he obtained definitely wouldn't be ordinary. Ling Han didn't unleash the Revere Life Sword. He wanted to test his defense after cultivating toughness and gentleness, and see how he would perform against battle prowess close to the limits of the deity transformation tier. A mere spiritual infant tier warrior dares to challenge me. Jia Ming charged over with large strides, and shot out a punch. The intent of martial art shone, bringing up a band of light behind his fist. Ling Han roused his fists to meet the attack, wrapping his fists with origin power, and launched an attack against Jia Ming. Both of them cultivated body arts, and were naturally more inclined towards close combat. Jia Ming's attainments in body arts were quite good, and his physique was comparable to rare metals of the same tier. Moreover, he was originally a major tier higher than Ling Han, so both of them were on the same level in terms of physique, toughness. As for gentleness, as their fists collided, their arms turned into ripples that surged endlessly. If this was on an ordinary person's body, their bones would definitely have been shattered by the shock, but these two people were perfectly fine, using such fluctuations to continuously eliminate the power they received. Jia Ming was surprised. Jia Ming actually also comprehended toughness and gentleness. One had to know that when they clashed previously, Ling Han only displayed his toughness side. His physique rose another level, and added with the combination of toughness and gentleness, he had the confidence to suppress Ling Han. He never thought that Ling Han would also improve, comprehending the gentleness technique, which allowed the defensive level of both sides to return to the same level. Since their defenses were equal, then it was attack power. Jia Ming grinned, revealing a savage expression. The weapon in his hand suddenly released a frost-like cold light, bringing along a terrifying force as it sliced towards Ling Han. Pooh! Ling Han took this attack head-on, and instantly, a streak of blood flew out, leaving a wound on his elbow. He couldn't help but glance at the weapon. This should be an extremely high-grade spirit tool. Although it couldn't unleash its full power, it still caused damage to his physique. After all, Jia Ming's power was much higher than his, and after activating the spirit tool, it naturally caused damage to him. However, the strength of the indestructible Heaven Scroll was not only reflected in the toughness of the physique, but also the recovery ability. Visible to the naked eye, Ling Han's injury disappeared in an instant. If one hadn't been staring at his injury, they probably wouldn't have noticed that he had actually been injured earlier. This kind of recovery ability caused Jia Ming's expression to change drastically. Chapter 729. Ling Han cracked a smile, and said, "Come, this time you can only die with a grievance." His eyes also revealed a murderous intent. Being provoked by Jia Ming time and time again, it made him want to kill. As long as he could kill, he would absolutely not be lenient. Jia Ming snorted, knowing that he couldn't kill Ling Han just by relying on the suppression of a large realm. He growled, a strange sound coming from his throat, and the veins all over his body bulged, as if something terrifying was going to drill out of his body. Ling Han didn't dare to underestimate him. His opponent's battle prowess had obtained the approval of the martial arts stone, suppressing the prodigies of all ages and ranking 51st. Although this wasn't his current peak battle prowess, he still couldn't be careless. Underestimating any prodigy, it was extremely possible for him to plant the seed of annihilation. For styles of devil snake. Jia Ming shouted loudly, charging towards Ling Han. His fist blasted out, aiming straight for Ling Han's lower abdomen. Ling Han raised his hand to block the attack. His palm slashed at his opponent's wrist, but his opponent's wrist was like a ball of flour, actually twisting around and striking towards his chest, the sharp blade in his hand emitting a cold light. Ling Han was astonished. Was this guy a spineless coward? How could he deform his hand like this? This wasn't just comprehending the soft side, but some kind of secret technique. Like a snake, yes, it was the bones of a snake. Ling Han's body abruptly bent backwards, slashing at the swing of the curved blade. It was practically impossible for an ordinary elemental energy martial artist to perform such an action. Only a body cultivator could make the body react so quickly. Furthermore, Ling Han seemed to have been chopped in half by a blade. The degree of bending of his upper body was even more unimaginable. Jia Ming swung his fist again, but this time his arm had transformed into a large snake. The snake's head opened, biting towards Ling Han. The black snake's head was vivid and lifelike, and its venomous fangs could be clearly seen. This punch was really too fast, so fast that Ling Han couldn't dodge in time. Pooh! This punch instantly pierced through Ling Han. N. Jia Ming frowned. His attack did not hit Ling Han. Ling Han transformed into a flash of lightning and fled 30 feet away. He reappeared and said with a smile, I almost fell for it. Not bad, this move is not bad. One move after another, it does have some standard. He had already cultivated the thunderclap 9th heaven to the small success stage, so of course his speed was fast. It's more than just a little. It's more than enough to kill you. Jia Ming raised his battle prowess and charged towards Ling Han. He was indeed tyrannical. He was the genius of the Earth Dragon sect, the martial art master Shi Lu Ming. Furthermore, he was an entire realm higher than Ling Han. Whether it was in terms of power or battle prowess, he had the upper hand. If it were not for Ling Han's powerful recovery ability and the thunderclap 9th heaven to avoid damage, he would definitely have been heavily injured by his opponent. Even so, Ling Han was becoming more and more passive, only able to exchange 1 or 2 moves out of 10. Today is the day you die. Jia Ming let out a long howl. He wanted to kill Ling Han in one go. It sounds better than a song, Ling Han said calmly. He was only testing to what extent his physique's defense could reach. Right now, it was also not a reflection of his full battle prowess. I will write these words on your tombstone, and let the world know that there is such an arrogant idiot who is still so stubborn even when death is at hand. Jia Ming laughed loudly, and his curved blade shone with a cold glint. This was very frightening, and could pose a great threat to Ling Han's defense. After all, it was a high-grade spirit tool, and coupled with Jia Ming's even stronger strength, it could even tear apart 8th-tier rare metal. Ling Han no longer passively took a beating. He took out the Revere Life Sword, raised it horizontally in his hand, and pointed it at Jia Ming, saying, My sword will slash you. Jia Ming looked at this sword, and could not help but reveal a moved expression. He blurted out, Formation patterns. This was obviously a sword, but it was actually covered in formation patterns. Strange, too strange, and exceeded his imagination. You can die under this sword without regrets. Ling Han brandished his sword and attacked. Previously, without a sword in hand, he was unable to maximize the power of the sword ray, but it was different now. The Revere Life Sword was made from some godly metal, and added with the evil chi formed by the formation patterns, the sword ray unleashed naturally had stronger destructive power. Shwa, the sword ray swept out, as if it could destroy heaven and earth, extremely terrifying. I'm in the deity transformation tier, do you think I'll be afraid of you? Jia Ming snorted coldly, and waved his fist. The ray turned into chi, and condensed into large black snakes that pounced towards Ling Han to bite. Pu, the formation patterns on the Revere Life Sword shone. There were only 7 of them, but even so, it was extremely terrifying, and it twisted those large snakes into pieces. Jia Ming's expression was livid. He knew that this sword was very powerful, but he did not expect it to reach such a level. Its destructive power could only be described as terrifying. How could there be such a treasured tool? What Ling Han brandished was not as simple as a peerless weapon, but also a formation, a peerless killing formation. How could anyone break through this? Jia Ming howled, and finally unleashed his ultimate move. The phantom of the large snakes behind him disappeared, and it turned into a real earth dragon. This kind of action caused him incomparable pain, and his face was covered with blue veins as if they were about to burst. After he roared, the phantom of the earth dragon behind him finally stabilized, and it emitted an ancient, primordial aura. At the beginning of the world, an earth dragon tunneled out from the crack between heaven and earth, ancient and mysterious. The earth dragon raised its head. It had no facial features, only a mouthpart. Its entire body was dark red, and one could clearly see its limbs. It was as if it could even ooze greasy bodily fluids, giving off an extremely disgusting feeling. Die! Jia Ming pointed at Ling Han, and that earth dragon immediately pounced towards Ling Han. So fast. This was not a physical body, and it could not be measured with common sense. In an instant, it arrived in front of Ling Han, and fiercely bit down. But because it was not a physical body, it naturally could not cause any substantial damage. Its entire body surged past, as if a shadow had streaked past. Jia Ming, however, laughed loudly, and said, "Ling Han, you are already a dead man." His face was a little pale, but he wore a carefree smile. This was his true trump card, and it had activated the power of his bloodline. Because his ancestral blood was not at its peak density, it was very strenuous for him to use such a big move, and it would even cause a certain backlash. But it did not matter. Although this earth dragon was a phantom, and could not cause any damage to a physical body, it specialized in hurting one's divine spirit. Ling Han's divine spirit should have been devoured by the earth dragon. Even if it had not completely disappeared, there was only a shred of it left at most. How much strength did he have left to fight? He let out a long roar, and charged towards Ling Han. This time, he wanted to completely kill Ling Han. With a burst of brute force, he rushed out like an angry arrow, and instantly arrived in front of Ling Han. The curved blade in his hand slashed towards Ling Han's neck. The toughness of the physique was cultivated through cultivation, but the softness of the physique needed to be controlled. With Ling Han's current state, was it still okay? Die! A cold smile hung at the corner of his mouth. Finally, he could behead this great thorn in his side. Chapter 730. With a punch, the patterns on the curved blade glowed, releasing a dense chill. A cruel smile appeared at the corner of Jia Ming's mouth. With this punch, this opponent with the strongest battle prowess throughout the ages would completely become a thing of the past, and this made him extremely happy. Zhu Xian and the others all cried out in surprise. What was wrong with Ling Han? Xiao, right at this moment, Ling Han's figure twisted, and he actually miraculously dodged this attack. How is that possible? The smile on Jia Ming's face instantly froze, but before he could come back to his senses, a frighteningly cold light swept past, slashing towards his chest. He did not expect Ling Han to be able to react at all. In addition to the fact that he had just used a big move, his condition had fallen to a low point. It was impossible for him to dodge this sword. Puff, his chest was hit by the sword, and his whole body was sent flying, blood spurting out of his chest. How is it possible that you still have a soul? Jia Ming asked while clutching his chest. This kind of confusion had already exceeded the injuries he had suffered. If he did not figure it out, he would really not be able to die in peace. Ling Han smiled and said, "Why should I tell you?" Previously, when that earth dragon attacked, he was indeed affected, but the black tower shook slightly, dispelling that discomfort. Thus, he decided to remain calm and collected as he tricked the other party. Jia Ming was so angry that he wanted to eat someone. That was his trump card, and he had relied on it to rush up to the 51st rank on the martial arts stone. But it actually didn't have the slightest effect on Ling Han, which drove him crazy. Could it be that this was the difference between the first and the 51st? Wah! He violently spat out a mouthful of blood. Firstly, it was because he was so angry that his heart was attacked. Secondly, the injury caused by the sword in his chest was too great. The killing intent transformed into countless small swords that swam around his body, causing him to be in so much pain that he wished he were dead. Tears of blood flowed out of his eyes. He was filled with hatred. If he hadn't been so confident in his own ultimate move, he wouldn't have been so easily injured by Ling Han. In terms of true strength, he was definitely not weaker than Ling Han. After all, he was also a peerless genius, and he had the advantage of a realm. Now, he had suffered a crushing defeat in front of everyone. Furthermore, he had been defeated by someone of a higher cultivation level. How could he accept this? Ling Han brandished his sword and charged out again. He wanted to kill this person completely. Jia Ming retreated hastily. He didn't want to die in the hands of Ling Han. As long as his injuries were healed, he still had a chance to make a comeback. He was definitely not weaker than Ling Han. However, he was injured, and this movement caused him to spit out a mouthful of blood. He almost stumbled and fell, and his face became deathly pale. Ling Han arrived and slashed at his opponent's neck. He wanted to end this battle cleanly. Jia Ming was so hateful that his eyes were spitting fire. He was too conceited and didn't have a life-saving treasure on him. Firstly, he believed that no one in this world could or would dare to kill him. Secondly, he believed that with such a treasure, he would become dependent on it and be unable to display his full potential. But now, he was filled with regret. He did not want to die. He wanted to live so that he could take revenge. Only by living could he surpass Ling Han. A sword slashed down. Pa, an emaciated hand suddenly stretched out. 2 fingers joined together and clamped down on the sharp blade, not letting it descend even an inch further. An elder dressed in a long black robe also suddenly appeared. His figure was tall and sturdy, and it was as if there was a volcano hidden within his body that could erupt at any time and burn the heavens and destroy the earth. He looked at Ling Han with a smile, and said, "Young man, you are so ruthless in your attacks. You truly have a vicious heart." Ling Han swept the blade upwards, and the elder did not dare to take such a killing sword head-on. He withdrew his hand and retreated, and also picked up Jia Ming. Venerable Tong. Jia Ming revealed a pleasantly surprised expression. This was truly a chance of survival in a desperate situation. Even with his temperament, he couldn't help but lose his composure. This elder's surname was Tong, and his name was Yang Wen. He was an elite of the Earth Dragon sect, and had the cultivation of the Heaven tier. Ho ho, remember to wear the treasured talisman that Lord Sect Master bestowed upon you in the future. Don't think too highly of yourself anymore. A moment of carelessness and you'll die. Tong Yangwen laughed, but said solemnly. Yes. Jia Ming hurriedly nodded. His life had just been saved by the other party. No matter how arrogant he was, he did not dare to be arrogant at this time. Tong Yangwen shifted his gaze towards Ling Han, and his expression immediately became awe-inspiring. You didn't even hesitate to make a move against a senior brother from the same academy. Your temperament and moral character really make one's teeth turn cold. However, the academy's objective is to cure the sick and save the people. This seat will first cure your arrogance and let you taste a bit of suffering. He attacked. Hong, origin power condensed and transformed into a huge black hand. As if hiding the sky and covering the earth, it slapped down towards Ling Han. So fucking disgusting. He obviously wanted to take revenge on a personal grudge, but he made it sound so dignified. Ling Han's body turned into lightning and shot backwards swiftly. He said coldly, "Old thing, do you still have any shame? This was a duel in the first place. Since you agreed to the battle, you'll be responsible for your own life and death. Why didn't you jump out to save me when I was in danger? Since you want to be, don't even think about erecting some chastity memorial, it's disgusting." Tong Yangwen was so angry that his whole body trembled. A mere spiritual infant tier elite actually insulted him. He was in the consummate level of the Heaven tier, and was only one step away from stepping into the Shattering Void tier. No matter where he went, the world should only have the right to worship him, but now he was actually insulted in front of his face, which made him go mad with anger. "Brat, you dare insult this seat?" He rebuked, killing intent shooting out of his eyes. He didn't kill Ling Han because he cherished talent. This slave was not bad, and when he was sent to the immortal realm in the future, after being brainwashed, he could become a qualified hired thug. But Ling Han actually dared to insult him so badly, so his killing intent was naturally aroused. He was a slave, so what if he died? No matter how talented he was, I'll use 10 to make up for it, alright? Ling Han smiled faintly, and said, "Old beast, can't I insult you? I'm a heaven-grade alchemist, and my status is the same as yours. Tell me, why can't I insult you?" Tong Yangwen sneered. If it were a few hundred years ago, he really wouldn't want to offend a heaven-grade alchemist. That would ruin his relationship with the alchemist society, and affect the martial art of the whole vast lands. But now that the realm pill was about to be refined, it would be like getting rid of the birds and dogs. What use would alchemists have? At most, they'd bring a few with better talent into the immortal realm and nurture them, but they'd still be slaves. Just a dog slave, what's there to be arrogant about? Then you're really looking for death. Tong Yangwen's killing intent blazed. Harming a fellow disciple and insulting a senior, your skills are not righteous, and your intentions are punishable. This seat will punish you on behalf of the Restore Heaven Academy. Ling Han laughed coldly, and said, "If you want to punish a junior, there's no need to worry about finding excuses. Old dog, you've let this young master know a new height of shamelessness, truly admirable." Damn it! Tong Yangwen finally couldn't hold back anymore, and struck out with another palm. This time, his killing intent was aroused, and the large palm he struck out was much more terrifying. Vein-like patterns spread out, and the aura of the heaven tier pressed down. Just that aura alone could make a normal spiritual infant tier cultivator crumble. Ling Han's figure flashed, and he arrived beside Zhu Xian'er. He reached out to pick her up, and said, "Hunyo, rabbit, let's go." Facing a heaven tier head-on was something only an idiot would do. Chapter 731. Mountain River Stones. The elder from the Luo clan stared at the 7 mountain river stones on the black boulder, his eyes burning with passion. There were 7 special attribute mountain river stones, and if they were all spent on a single person, the Luo clan would nurture a super prodigy. On the other hand, though he was a 4-star genius, he would forever remain at the low extreme. This was only a freak that had been forcefully nurtured for the sake of the Heavenly Sea Mystery Realm. In this world filled with immortal-level elites, what did battle prowess at the peak stage of the medium extreme amount to? What the Luo clan needed was naturally battle prowess at the Sun-Moon tier, or even the Heavenly Body tier. 7 special attribute mountain river stones could increase one's battle prowess by 1 star. Advancing from 1 star to 2 stars was a piece of cake, but advancing from 2 stars to 3 stars, and from 3 stars to 4 stars was a different story. If one wanted to increase their battle prowess further, it would naturally be more difficult. For a 4-star genius, perhaps 7 mountain river stones wouldn't even be able to increase their battle prowess by half a star. No matter what, special attribute mountain river stones were precious treasures, and they were also the main focus of their trip. For a moment, the 4 members of the Luo clan didn't wonder where the Beast King had gone, and why Ling Han had appeared here. They didn't care. "Hao Min, go and retrieve the mountain river stones," the elder from the Luo clan instructed. Luo Hao Min hurriedly nodded, and said, "Yes, 7th uncle." There was an uncontrollable excitement on his face as he strode toward the black boulder. He was a talent that the Luo clan had focused on nurturing, and he had reached this level thousands of years earlier than Luo Ba and Luo Lai. However, in terms of talent, he was actually slightly inferior to Luo Ba. Among the people that the Luo clan had focused on nurturing, his ranking was below Luo Ba's. Now that Luo Ba was dead, his ranking had moved up, and he was qualified to enjoy this special mountain river stone. Oi, 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 Don't extend your claws towards something that doesn't belong to you. You're either a thief or a bandit, Ling Han said with a smile. His figure flashed, and he was even faster than Luo Haomin. Since I'm here, there's still a share for you, the elder from the Luo clan said with a sneer. He loosened his grip on the massive net, and leaped out to intercept Ling Han. He didn't take Ling Han seriously at all. He was merely at the Shattering Void tier, so what if he was invincible? That was only limited to the level of mortals. But once he advanced into the immortal level, that was really not enough. Ling Han didn't take out his bow, either. Instead, he used his body as the bow, and his origin power as the arrow, and shot it at Luo Haomin. What kind of power was he now? He was close to the peak stage of the medium extreme. Thus, he used the annihilating dragon star arrow cultivation technique to control this arrow. Even if he didn't use a bow or arrow, the might of this arrow still reached the peak stage of the medium extreme. Luo Haomin similarly didn't take Ling Han seriously. Moreover, there was seventh uncle looking after him from behind. In his eyes, there were only those 7 mountain river stones. This was an astonishing amount of wealth, and to be honest, even if he sold himself, he still couldn't compare to it. He didn't pay any attention to him, and continued to dash forward. Just how fast was the annihilating dragon star arrow? Pooh! Luo Haomin was instantly struck by the arrow. The arrow of origin power shot into his back, and then out of his chest. At this moment, his origin power was almost completely depleted, and with a flash, the entire arrow instantly disappeared into thin air. How is this possible? Luo Haomin slowly turned around, and he stretched out a hand as if he wanted to grab something. However, his hand had only stretched out halfway, and his body had already collapsed backward. Pang! He collapsed onto the ground, and his breathing stopped. He was at the peak stage of the low extreme, and moreover, he was a 1-star genius, yet he had actually been killed with a single strike. The old man from the Luo clan was both furious and shocked. He had already caught up to Ling Han, and with a loud roar, he launched a fist at Ling Han. You killed my people, so I'll kill you. Die, he roared. Ling Han smiled faintly, and said, you still can't do it. He also clenched his fist and launched a fist at the old man. Pang! The old man from the Luo clan was instantly sent flying by this strike. It was true that he was at the peak stage of the low extreme, and it was also true that he was a 4-star genius. However, his power definitely couldn't reach the medium extreme. Facing Ling Han head-on was no different from asking for a beating. Ling Han withdrew his fist, and calmly continued to walk toward the large black boulder. Only now did the 3 people from the Luo clan reveal expressions of shock. They were completely unable to imagine that Ling Han had clearly only been at the Shattering Void tier when he had entered the Mystery Realm. How had he become so powerful that he could even send an elite at the peak stage of the medium extreme of the Mountain River tier flying after a dozen or so days? Mountain River Stone. The old man from the Luo clan immediately understood. Only Mountain River stones could allow a Shattering Void tier cultivator to effortlessly advance into the Mountain River tier. Moreover, their progress would be so rapid that they wouldn't encounter any bottlenecks before reaching the peak stage of the low extreme. Gasp! Just how many Mountain River stones did this brat obtain? The 2 youths from the Luo clan also understood, and they couldn't help but go crazy with jealousy. They had already entered this mystery realm dozens of times, yet they had only obtained 3 Mountain River stones in total. Moreover, they were all ordinary Mountain River stones. Use the Crimson Ground locking net. Capture him. The old man from the Luo clan didn't dare to underestimate Ling Han anymore. This ant from a small world was already extremely powerful when he was at the Shattering Void tier. Now that he had advanced into the Mountain River tier, even if he had relied on Mountain River stones to advance, there was no difference between him and an actual Mountain River tier cultivator before he reached the medium extreme. One had to realize that this brat had passed 8 levels when he had entered the Scarlet Heaven Academy, and he had the potential to become a 4-star genius. The 3 youths unfurled the massive net, which they then used to enshroud Ling Han. Ling Han first put away the 7 mountain river stones. He definitely couldn't lose them. However, he didn't have any time to dodge in this manner, and he was completely enshrouded by the massive net. He was slightly astonished because the massive net was exuding a mysterious power that forcefully suppressed his cultivation level. He had originally been close to the peak stage of the low extreme, yet he could barely even reach the early stage of the low extreme now. He could just barely be considered to be in the mountain river tier. Ha ha ha. The 3 youths from the Luo clan roared with laughter. This was the Crimson Ground Locking Net, and it had been created specifically for the Lava Beast King. Who knew how much wealth the Luo clan had spent to create it? However, as long as they could capture that Beast King, any price they had to pay would be worth it. After all, this time, the next time, and the time after that, they would be able to obtain a steady stream of mountain river stones with special attributes. Even the Beast King couldn't block it, what more Ling Han? He had already entered the net, so he was like a turtle in a jar. Brat, obediently hand over the mountain river stones. If I'm in a good mood, perhaps I can grant you a quick death, a young man said. His name was Luo Jian. Humph, since you dared to kill someone from my Luo family, it would not be excessive even if you were to dismember your body into 10,000 pieces. Unfortunately, this cannot be made public. The reason why they killed people in Mystery Realms was because there was no evidence left behind. However, they could openly kill a disciple of the Scarlet Heaven Academy. Unless the Luo clan didn't want to stay in the Chaotic Star's majestic empire any longer. Then I'll slowly refine him. A cruel smile spread across Luo Jian's face. He knew that Ling Han's physique was incredibly tough, comparable to level 1 godly metal. Die! The elder from the Luo clan drew out a sword. There were multiple veined patterns on the blade of the sword, and under his control, it exuded an astonishing radiance. This was a level 1 god tool, and it had been bestowed upon him by the clan for this trip to the Mystery Realm. He raised the sword and pierced it toward Ling Han's heart. Cell phone reading. Chapter 732. Was he late? Ling Han's gaze swept over. There were at least 100 people here, and they were only standing outside the pavilion. Who knew how many people were inside? Bro, excuse me, what's the situation here? Ling Han pulled a person aside and asked. He was quite lucky, encountering someone who just happened to like to show off, and immediately began to talk non-stop. This was a library that hid many secret techniques, martial arts techniques, and cultivation techniques. Every secret technique was wrapped in a ball of light, flying in the sky. If one wanted to get it, they had to intercept it. If they caught it and shattered the ball of light, then the secret technique inside would be yours. Everyone could only enter once, and stay for a day at most. If one obtained a secret technique, then regardless of whether the time was up or not, they would be sent out. Ling Han was surprised, and said, "Isn't there a Shattering Void tier elite here? Wouldn't it be easier to just take this library? Wouldn't it be better to take it all away? No matter what secret technique you have, it's all mine." That person laughed loudly, and said, "Young man, luckily you asked me, or else others definitely wouldn't know." He lowered his voice, pretending to be mysterious, and said, "Let me tell you, this pavilion is a formation, and once the formation is destroyed, the secret technique hidden inside will be destroyed." Ling Han came to a realization. If he forcibly took it, he wouldn't get anything, so he naturally could only follow the rules of the game. It wasn't that Shattering Void tier elites couldn't do anything to this formation, but this formation took the secret technique as a hostage, so Shattering Void tier elites couldn't do anything. "Thanks." He nodded at that person, and then said to Zhu Xian'er and the others, "Let's go try our luck." They squeezed through the crowd and entered the library. Huh. Once they stepped in, they revealed a surprised expression because this place seemed to be a vast starry sky. In a pitch-black environment, there were spots of light dancing like meteors in the sky. Looking closely, this was the secret technique that person spoke of before, wrapped in a ball of light and flying all over the world. Of course, this wasn't the starry sky. At first glance, the space seemed very large, but in reality, it was only the size of an acre, and the height was around 500 feet. For a martial artist, this size and height was completely a matter of jumping, and they could reach wherever they wanted. However, just as Ling Han was about to soar into the sky, he discovered that there was a force that immediately suppressed him. He tried to move, but his speed was greatly suppressed. This greatly increased the difficulty of capturing the light orb. Everyone had to abide by the rules of the game here. You could disobey and resist, but with the power of the formation here, even Heaven-tier elites could only behave, and Shattering Void-tier elites might be able to break through the restraints, but the consequence would be the destruction of all the secret techniques here. I wonder who designed this library. It's quite a scam. The possibility of it being Fatty Ma was very high. This person was very mischievous. Here, everyone could only move at the speed of a normal person, and they could not jump very high. Therefore, there was almost no way to deal with the light balls that filled the sky. However, as the light balls danced chaotically, they would occasionally touch the ground, and could still be captured. This would require luck, because this place was quite large. If one didn't guard it beforehand, they wouldn't be able to capture the light balls when they flew down. Ling Han swept at the light balls in the sky. Because the speed of their movement was too fast, and the number was too dense, it was very difficult for him to clearly see what was inside the light balls. Occasionally, there were a few words, such as Sunflower Demon, Art Technique, and other incomplete names, which he believed were the names of these secret techniques. He activated the Eye of Truth, trying his best to capture the information displayed in these light balls. Found it. After almost an hour, Ling Han finally locked onto a light ball, and the name that appeared inside was Earth Overturning Seal. Even with the Eye of Truth, it was so difficult for him. The others probably couldn't distinguish the situation at all, and would probably make a move to snatch the light ball when it flew over. As for whether they could snatch it or not, that was another matter. Now, this light ball was flying at high speed. Ling Han tried to shoot out blood-sucking origin gold, but that thing's speed was too fast, and he couldn't catch up at all. No, there had to be a solution. Ling Han watched carefully, and was no longer in a hurry to make a move. He was afraid that if he accidentally caught another light ball, he would be sent out of the library. Yeah, Nyo caught one, Hu Nyo said happily. Her luck was especially good, as a light ball actually walked right into her trap and landed on her body. The little girl obviously wouldn't be polite, and caught the light ball. Xiao, the little girl, was also immediately sent out of the library. Ling Han withdrew his gaze, and continued to stare at the light ball that enveloped the Earth Overturning Seal. After observing for half a day, he finally discovered that there was actually a pattern to the movement of this light ball. However, the changes were extremely complicated, and it was naturally very difficult to calculate. The next landing point is. Ling Han immediately moved, and ran towards the place he had calculated, but when he was halfway there, a person appeared in front of him, blocking his path. Excuse me, Ling Han said, and moved slightly to the side, bypassing the other's side. After all, they didn't know each other, and if he rushed over rashly, it was very likely that he would suffer a painful attack from the other. Shua, his figure passed through, and in front of him, a light ball was quickly descending, less than 3 meters away from him. Normally, this would only be a moment's speed, but now, Ling Han had to run 3 steps. Heng, how dare you! That person was furious, and directly drew out a large saber, slashing towards Ling Han. Xiao, the saber ray turned into a waterfall, swiftly slashing towards him. I'm just passing by, and we've even exchanged greetings. I didn't even touch you, and you're going to kill me? Ling Han didn't move to parry, as that would be a waste of time. He directly took this saber strike with his physique, and he didn't even have the energy to circulate the particles in his body to avoid as much damage as possible. Pooh! The saber ray slashed on his body, causing his body to tremble, and a bloodstain appeared on his back. Thankfully, it was only a light wound, and the body of Diamond automatically healed the wound. He stretched out his hand, and grabbed at the rapidly descending light ball. Shio! The light ball brushed past his fingers, bounced on the ground, and returned to the sky. Fuck! Ling Han cursed inwardly. It was precisely a slash from the opponent that caused his body to be deformed, and in the end, it was only a hair's breadth's difference. Damn it! Hee, young man, this is a lesson for you. Don't be so impulsive in the future, the person who struck said from behind, full of schadenfreude. Previously, he had unleashed that saber strike because firstly, he was indeed annoyed, and secondly, when he suddenly saw that ball of light shooting down in the direction that Ling Han was running, he immediately felt jealous. I can't have it, so why should I let you have it? A mere spiritual infant tier junior, he naturally had no fear. He was in the peak stage of the deity transformation tier, and his battle prowess surpassed 9 stars. Could it be that this junior dared to seek revenge on him? Ling Han indeed wanted to kill, but when his eyes swept over the light ball in the sky, he forcibly restrained himself. He had to find and lock onto that light ball again, and calculate the next time and location it would fall. There was only 1 day's time, and according to the previous pattern, he only had one last chance. Chapter 733. That deity transformation tier cultivator saw Ling Han cower, and couldn't help but reveal a proud expression. To him, this was naturally a matter of course, a mere spiritual infant tier cultivator dared to challenge him. At least you're sensible. There was another junior beside that deity transformation tier cultivator. He glanced disdainfully at Ling Han, but deep in his eyes hid deep jealousy. Of course, they were about the same age, and he was even 5 or 6 years older, but he just crossed into the flower blossom tier, while Ling Han was already in the spiritual infant tier, a whole major tier. Calculating from this, how many years was he behind Ling Han? At least 10 years. They were in their 20s, cultivating for no more than a dozen years. What kind of concept was a difference of 10 years? How huge was the gap between their talent? Ling Han swept a glance over them, and memorized the appearances of these two people. Fuck, if I don't show my might, you guys really think I'm a sick cat? What are you glaring at? Stare again and I'll dig out your eyes. That junior glared, looking extremely fierce. His name was Zhou Yucheng, and he came out with the family's third elder, Zhou de Yuan, because he was the most talented among the 3 young generations of the Zhou family, advancing into the flower blossom tier at the mere age of 24, and had high hopes of advancing into the deity transformation tier in the future. The Zhou family was a deity transformation tier clan, with a total of 4 such existences. The third elder, Zhou de Yuan, was the strongest, reaching the peak of the deity transformation tier. In the Zhou family, Zhou Yucheng was fully deserving of being the number 1 genius, and in the surrounding 1,000 miles, he was also one of the best, and the geniuses that could stand side by side with him could be counted on one's fingers. However, in the middle state, he could only be called a genius, and there was still a huge gap from top geniuses and super geniuses. For example, he couldn't enter the Restore Heaven Academy. So, after failing the entrance test of the Restore Heaven Academy, he especially hated people more talented than him, wanting to destroy each one he saw, with a kind of morbid madness. Ling Han withdrew his gaze and focused his attention on the ball of light again. Earth overturning seal, mystical power. In comparison, what was the incessant chattering of such a minor character? He could be killed with a casual slap in the future, and if he missed a mystical power because of this, that would be a great loss. Zhou Yucheng couldn't help but feel proud of himself. What's the use of being a genius? Can you be more powerful than a deity transformation tier cultivator? Zhou de Yuan did not pay any more attention to Ling Han. His main focus now was naturally to capture a ball of light. If he could obtain a superior cultivation technique, he might be able to take that crucial step and become a heaven-tier existence. That would be really awesome. Zhu Xian Air and Rabbit each had their own gains, and after obtaining a light orb, they were sent out. One day and one night were almost over. Xiao, the ball of light that Ling Han had been staring at fell from the sky again. Ling Han had already rushed out and stretched out his hand to grab. However, at this moment, another hand reached out and grabbed the ball of light. That person was really lucky. Naturally, he did not calculate the trajectory of the ball of light. Instead, he was originally standing there, and the ball of light just happened to hit him, as if it was throwing itself at him. That person didn't stand on ceremony either. He reached out and grabbed the ball of light almost at the same time as Ling Han. It was Xianyuan Ziguang. Ling Han was slightly surprised. He already knew that this person's luck was heaven-defying. He belonged to the super lucky person who would not only not die after falling off a cliff, but would also obtain ancient treasures from predecessors. Now, this luck attribute was also playing a role. The earth-overturning seal threw itself at him, making even Ling Han jealous. Sigh, some people were really born with good luck. However, Ling Han was even more confident because he relied on strength. Strength was always there, and would only continuously improve. As for luck, there would always be a time when it was used up, and there would always be a time when it wasn't working. Furthermore, if one's luck was too good, and the path was too smooth, it would not be beneficial to the growth of the path of martial art. Ling Han. Xianyuan Ziguang also arrived at Ling Han, and could not help but roar angrily. He especially hated Ling Han. Not only did he repeatedly defeat him and strike a blow to his confidence, but he also snatched away the person of his heart. Now, he still wanted to snatch secret arts from him. His whole body surged with divine light, as if a son of God had descended, indescribably mighty. That was the armor he was wearing. Now, several hundred vein-like patterns were all shining, emitting over 1,000 rays of light that swiftly slashed towards Ling Han. This was a spirit tool, possibly even an 8th tier one. Xianyuan Ziguang's luck was really heaven-defying. He definitely did not have this spirit tool in the past. Going out to pick up a spirit tool, the bell of fortune of heaven and earth. Ling Han was unafraid. His body glowed like a treasured artifact. You're only strong because you rely on the spirit tool, but I'm this strong myself. Who's more awesome? Shwa, 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 the light of the treasured artifact continuously slashed at Ling Han's body, slicing open his clothes and slashing at his body. Every piece of his skin was moving, as if each of them had their own will. The spirit tool's attacks were all ineffective. Peng Ling Han threw out a punch. How could Xianyuan Ziguang resist? Instantly, he stumbled back 7 steps, his face flushed red, then turned pale. He could not breathe properly, and almost fainted on the spot. His expression was unsightly. He could not defeat Ling Han in the past, and he still could not defeat him now. Even if he used a spirit tool, it was still not enough. Why was the gap between them getting bigger and bigger? He was a person who had the fortune of heaven and earth. Ling Han smiled slightly. He had finally obtained that ball of light. Pa! He crushed the ball of light, and the words on it immediately disappeared, becoming dim. Inside was a jade-colored pearl. The inheritance of mystical powers was not through written language. Earth overturning seal, mystical power technique. Xianyuan Ziguang shouted loudly, pointing at Ling Han with his right hand. Return the mystical power to me. Shwa, in an instant, almost 2/3 of the gazes turned towards Ling Han in unison, all of them filled with greed. Although mystical powers had never been graded, according to legends, this was even more awesome than a heaven-grade technique. It belonged to the secret techniques cultivated by gods, and was lost in the mortal realm. who wouldn't be envious? Xiao, Ling Han's figure flashed, and he had already left the library. He had obtained a secret technique, and was sent out by the library. Ling Han, Hun Yo and the others all came up to greet him. Ling Han nodded, and said, "Prepare to escape." "Escape again?" Hun Yo said with a grin, and clapped her hands. "How fun, who runs faster?" "Hee hee, where do you guys want to run to?" A large group of people chased out of the library. They weren't teleported, but walked out on their own, so they were obviously a bit slower. Zhou De Yuan looked at Ling Han, and said indifferently, "Hand over the mystical power, and I can spare your life." Ling Han couldn't help but seethe with killing intent. Previously, because of the earth overturning seal, he didn't seek him out to settle the score, but he never thought that he would actually deliver himself to his doorstep. He said indifferently, "Oh, on what basis?" Zhou De Yuan obviously felt good about himself, and with his hands behind his back, he said, "Your intelligence is truly worrisome. No matter what, you can't possibly keep this mystical power. The only choice you can make is whether or not to give up your life." Chapter 734. Third Patriarch, what's the point of talking to him? Kill him, and the mystical ability will be ours. Zhou Yuqing shouted from the side. That's true. Zhou De Yuan nodded, and strode towards Ling Han. The aura of the deity transformation tier spread out, not only to intimidate Ling Han, but also to intimidate the others. His meaning was that this brat was his cup of tea, and they had better think twice before making a move. Ling Han looked at the two from the Zhou clan, and his killing intent boiled. Previously, because of Zhou De Yuan's attack, he had missed the earth overturning seal. If not for the fact that he still had one more chance, he would have torn Zhou De Yuan to pieces. Previously, he didn't have time to settle the score with them, but now that they had come to him, Ling Han still needed to be polite. He smiled faintly and said, "As the saying goes, the bird that sticks out gets shot." The others didn't move, but you two idiots jumped out. If this isn't seeking death, then what is? Presumptuous. In front of the third patriarch, you have no place to be arrogant. Zhou Yuqing pointed. If not for the fact that his realm was lower, he really wanted to rush up and tear Ling Han to shreds. Zhou De Yuan's gaze was also gloomy. He stretched out his right hand, and vein-like patterns intertwined to form a brilliant light. He snorted coldly and grabbed towards Ling Han. Origin power condensed, forming an even larger palm that descended from the sky and slapped towards Ling Han. It was incomparably swift and fierce, and its goal was to take Ling Han's life. Ling Han stood motionless, and only acted when the large palm slapped down. A sword ray slashed out, and the large palm was split into two, its brilliance dissipating. Ah! Zhou De Yuan couldn't help but snort. Using his left hand to support his right hand, he saw that there was a cut on his right palm, and fresh blood was flowing out. Pa, 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 the blood dripped onto the ground, causing the earth to tremble. The blood of a deity transformation tier cultivator was definitely a precious medicine. If it met an unscrupulous alchemist, it could even be harvested and used as medicine. Zhou De Yuan hurriedly used origin power to stop the loss of blood, but he was shocked to find that there was a terrifying sword intent circulating in the wound. His origin power was shattered as soon as it surged over, and it actually sealed the wound. Blood was still flowing. How was this possible? How could this brat's battle prowess be so strong? Just one sword strike was enough to injure him so badly. Zhou De Yuan couldn't believe it. A mere spiritual infant tier junior had lowered his head and admitted defeat after being slashed by him, not even daring to show his anger. If the other party was really that strong, then what the hell was he going to tolerate? Third ancestor. Zhou Yuqing called out in a trembling voice. In his mind, the four ancestors of the clan should be existences that could sweep through the world. How could they suffer a loss at the hands of a brat? Zhou De Yuan was the source of his arrogance, as well as the source of his confidence. Now that the third patriarch had been injured by a single sword strike, he immediately wanted to retreat. He was afraid that there might be a chance. Old dog, since you insist on seeking death, I can only fulfill your wish. Ling Han didn't draw out the Revere Life Sword or the Demon Birth Sword. Just now, he had merely waved his fingers together, but he had used the Thunderclap Ninth Heaven mystical power. It was this mystical power that wreaked havoc on the other party's wounds, not allowing the other party's wounds to heal easily. I'm going to kill you. Zhou De Yuan roared. He drew out his saber, and brandished it as he slashed at Ling Han. Xiao, a saber light slashed out. It was over a dozen meters long, and it transformed into a raging dragon. Ling Han also drew his sword. After all, the other party was in existence at the peak of the deity transformation tier. That strike from before could be said to have hit the other party with carelessness, but he certainly couldn't be underestimated. What he drew out was the Demon Birth Sword. Against someone like Zhou De Yuan, the Demon Birth Sword was enough. If the Demon Birth Sword still had a spirit, it would definitely feel very wronged. I'm also a dignified 10th tier spirit tool, yet I'm actually reduced to killing a deity transformation tier cultivator. Shua, sword ray shot out, but it was only about 3 meters long. The power of ray was determined by its length and thickness. The longer and thicker it was, the more terrifying ray's destructive power would be. Thus, when the ray shot out by Ling Han was only 3 meters long, Zhou De Yuan's heart immediately calmed down, and Zhou Yuqing's confidence also recovered. He actually doubted his own ancestor, he really thought too highly of that brat. Pooh! The sword ray and the saber ray collided. Pooh! The saber ray was actually split in two right down the middle. The two halves of the saber ray still swept over according to their original trajectory, but they streaked past Ling Han's left and right sides, not even needing to give way. But the sword ray was like a peerless godly weapon, continuing to sweep towards Zhou De Yuan. Zhou De Yuan was greatly shocked, and hurriedly leaped up to dodge, his face filled with shock. How was this possible? The quality of his saber ray was actually so much inferior to that of Ling Han's sword ray, and in a direct confrontation, it was completely destroyed by the other's sword ray. It was really like a broken wooden sword meeting a real sword, and was destroyed upon contact. He couldn't help but tremble a little. Indeed, the thicker and longer the sword ray, the better, and its destructive power would be. But just like sword chi, sword ray also depended on two other things, the martial artist's comprehension and the grade of the weapon he was using. That sword, Zhou De Yuan absolutely did not believe that Ling Han's understanding of the way of the sword far surpassed his grasp of the saber ray. Then there was only one explanation. The grade of the spirit weapon in the other's hands was too high, causing the sword ray to be incomparably swift and fierce. In terms of quality, not only did it make up for the difference of a major realm, it could also turn around and crush him. Ha, this is also this old man's. He made up his mind, thinking that Ling Han had relied on the advantage of the spirit weapon, and not because of his own strength. Although, the spirit weapon was also a part of one's strength. He attacked again, using his movement technique, wanting to dazzle the eyes and make Ling Han brandish his sword in vain. He would then strike again and kill Ling Han, seizing that treasured sword and mystical ability. Ling Han stood motionless, as if he couldn't catch his figure at all. Zhou De Yuan couldn't help but be overjoyed, and in a flash, he had already appeared behind Ling Han. Suddenly, he slashed out with his saber, slashing towards Ling Han's neck. Die, die! Shua, the saber slashed out. Zhou De Yuan was delighted at first, but then he was greatly shocked. There was actually no trace of Ling Han in front of him. Instantly, a strong sense of unease surged in his heart. Sure enough, a voice rang out behind him, saying, "What, looking for me?" He was so shocked that even his anus tightened, and cold sweat instantly poured down his body like a waterfall. Hurriedly, he turned around and slashed out with his saber. Shwa, the saber light flashed, biting cold and eerie. However, it missed again. Could it be? Just when Zhou de Yuan's heart and liver were about to burst, a voice came from behind him again. I'm not going to play with you anymore. No. Zhou de Yuan was just about to shout, Pu, he only felt a chill on his back. He then realized that the tip of a sword had pierced through his chest, and his heart had already been pierced through. He was both angry and shocked. He was actually being played by Ling Han like a cat playing with a mouse, but the corners of his mouth curled up in a cold smile. You're too small. A deity transformation tier, how could someone who has reached his level die so easily? His life force was too strong. So what if his heart exploded? He could use origin power to condense it, and then take life-saving treasured medicine, and he could still live. But your sword pierced through my body, and I brandished my saber again. How could you dodge? Zhou de Yuan wanted to turn around and strike, but the origin power that he immediately used was like a flood that had opened the floodgates. It actually flowed out, and no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't condense it. He didn't even have the strength to hold the saber. The treasured saber fell, and the tip of the saber smashed down, actually forcibly slicing off half of his right foot. What was the difference between a deity transformation tier and a body refinement tier without the protection of origin power? Phone reading was more refreshing. Chapter 735. Ding Lian had to have only just mastered the 9th form of the staff technique. The intent realm he was displaying was extremely dry and unrefined. Couldn't you have mastered it a little later? King and Lan and Qi Feng both grumbled in their minds. It was already extremely difficult for cultivators like them to increase their strength any further after reaching their current cultivation level. They had both stagnated at this cultivation level for hundreds of thousands of years, and their cultivation bases had already become extremely solid. Even a slight increase in their cultivation bases was extremely difficult. However, if they could take another step forward, it would be enough to give them an advantage when facing powerful opponents. Ding Lian smiled proudly, and said, "Eat my staff." His staff was pointed toward the sky, and it was as if he was going to smash it down. However, when he raised his staff, streaks of golden light converged to form a circle of Ding Lian. There were a total of 36 of them, and they surrounded King and Lan and Qi Feng in the center. All of them raised their staffs in unison, and it was as if they were golden battle Buddhas. King and Lan and Qi Feng didn't dare to be careless, and they both unleashed their battle prowess to the maximum. This powerful opponent had taken another small step forward, and this made their hearts tremble in fear. Boom! The 36 Ding Lians swung their staffs at the same time. Peng, 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 peng. The sky once again transformed into a world of interweaving dazzling lights, and the entire heaven and earth became dim. This was because the dazzling lights were too bright, and the contrast was too stark. When the dazzling lights dissipated, blood could be seen at the corners of King and Lan and Qi Feng's mouths. It was clear that they had been injured. Pooh! Ding Lian also spat out a mouthful of blood. However, the blood was golden in color, and it immediately burst into flames the moment he spat it out. It was completely incinerated before it could even land on the ground. Ha ha ha! Qi Feng roared with laughter, and said, "Ding Lian, you haven't truly grasped the 9th style of the staff technique. You're merely forcefully activating it by boiling your blood essence. You're risking your life. How many more moves can you unleash?" Ding Lian stood proudly in the sky, his black hair fluttering in the wind. His battle intent soared into the sky, and it was as if his battle intent had materialized. "Don't worry, I guarantee that I can beat you to death," he said heroically. Qi Feng couldn't help but humph as his aura was stolen. He indeed wanted to kill Ling Han and eliminate a potential threat. However, he definitely wouldn't be willing to suffer severe injuries or even lose his life because of this. Ding Lian was acting like he was willing to fight to the death for Ling Han, yet Qi Feng lacked this willpower. Thus, if the two of them battled, it was extremely likely that he would lose. King Enlon also frowned. He hadn't thought that Ding Lian would be willing to risk his life to protect a measly cultivator at the mountain river tier. It was said that among the 7 generals, Ding Lian was the most loyal to Empress Luan Xing. This was absolutely true. The Empress wanted him to escort these trial takers, and he carried out her orders without any hesitation. In fact, he didn't even hesitate to risk his life. An elite at the heavenly body tier was actually so foolishly loyal. King Enlon hadn't seen Empress Luan Xing before. However, he had heard of her great name for a long time. She was known as the most beautiful woman in the world, and even the emperors of 2 majestic empires were infatuated with her. A sense of curiosity involuntarily welled up in his heart. He really wanted to meet this empress. What kind of beauty was she that could cause an elite like Ding Lian to be so unrepentant? Qi Feng's heart was already in chaos, and he similarly didn't have the determination to fight to the death. Thus, there was no need for this battle to continue. King Enlon smiled faintly, and said, "Since Great General Ding is so determined, we'll give you some face and spare this brat." In any case, Ling Han was only in the low extreme of the mountain river tier, and he was still extremely far away from the heavenly body tier. There would be plenty of opportunities to kill him in the future. Qi Feng didn't say anything. He was extremely displeased that he was being suppressed by his mortal enemy in terms of aura. Ding Lian rested his staff on his shoulder, and merely chuckled coldly. He didn't seem to appreciate King Enlan's kindness at all. Face was earned through battle, and definitely not out of charity. However, we won't make a move. How about we let the juniors test out their skills? King Enlan suddenly changed the topic. It was clear that he hadn't given up on killing Ling Han. Fine. Ding Lian's reply was very straightforward this time. He waved his hand, and said, "As long as we're at the same cultivation level or of similar age, I won't interfere." If they still couldn't defeat Ling Han, then such trash deserved to die. The 3 elites landed on the ground at the same time. King Enlon smiled as he asked the juniors of the Chaotic Star's Majestic Empire, "Which one of you wants to battle with that prodigy from the Chaotic Star's Majestic Empire? Whoever is able to kill that human shall be taken in as my disciple." Qi Feng tossed out a handsome reward right away. For a moment, no one responded. In the Crimson Lake, many people had seen Ling Han in action. That guy was practically a freak. He was completely unscathed even after falling into the Crimson Lake. Who could rival such a defense? Moreover, the fact that he had ascended the island 3 times was already a clear indication of his strength. It wasn't that the gravitational force would be stronger if one's cultivation level was higher. Instead, it was the same for everyone. So, what did the fact that Ling Han could ascend the island 3 times signify? His power and physique were completely superior to anyone in the low extreme. Winning glory for the Majestic Empire was admittedly very beautiful. However, what if he lost in front of so many people? That would be extremely humiliating. King Enlon and Qi Feng's expressions involuntarily darkened. There was actually no one who dared to challenge Ling Han. This caused them to feel extremely humiliated. Wah, Blockhead is so powerful now. There's no one who dares to challenge him anymore. Li Weiwei was both astonished and excited. Even when Zhao Luan was rising to prominence, prodigies from the 2 majestic empires would occasionally rush over to challenge him. However, Ling Han was actually so powerful that no one dared to challenge him. This was definitely history. Tang Feng involuntarily clenched his fists upon seeing this. Jealousy and hatred welled up in his heart. He swore that he would challenge Ling Han when he returned and knock him off his pedestal. A bunch of trash. Qi Feng suddenly waved his hand, and said, "All of you, scram to the ship." The members of the Eternity Sky Majestic Empire all dejectedly boarded the warship. Who asked them to not even have the courage to challenge Ling Han? Meanwhile, King Enlon sighed, and also had his people board the warship. The two elites both cast a deep look at Ling Han before ordering the warship to turn around and return to their empire. In any case, Ling Han was still very far away from the heavenly body tier. They could just ask the Dark Knight Hall to make a move in the future. Killing a mountain river tier cultivator would be a simple task. Let's return. Ding Li and also waved his hand. When everyone boarded the warship, he immediately entered the cabin. His face instantly turned golden, and he suddenly knelt on the ground. Cold sweat flowed down his face like a small stream. How could he not pay a price for blocking two elites alone? Moreover, he had even forcefully unleashed the 9th technique of the Supreme Earth Staff technique at the end. This was far too much of a burden on him. It was only because he wanted to intimidate King Enlon and King Enlon that he had forcefully restrained himself. Otherwise, how could the two elites let him go so easily? The warship quickly entered the territory of the Chaotic Star's Majestic Empire. Ding Li was able to draw on power of the nation to heal his injuries, and his mood was greatly calmed. At this moment, even if the two elites came to their senses and turned around to chase after him, he wouldn't be afraid. He could draw on power of the nation, and his battle prowess would increase by another star. With this, he would definitely be able to thrash the two of them. After the warship returned to the imperial capital, everyone dispersed and returned to their respective homes. However, everyone would take one more look at Ling Han before they left. This prodigy was about to rise unstoppably. However, he didn't have a backer, so it was relatively easy for such a prodigy to die along the way. Chapter 736. Ling Han's first move was a big move. There were too many elites here, and a heaven tier or shattering void tier elite might suddenly jump out, so he had to finish the battle quickly. Killing a teacher of the academy was a huge crime, but with Ling Han's temper, what did he care? Kill first, think later. Shwa, 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 sword light blazed. Although the Revere Life Sword couldn't be fully activated, with Ling Han's strength, he could still activate Deity Transformation tier-level destructive power, forming a terrifying killing formation that swept towards Mao Jun and the other man. This isn't a normal sword light. Sword formation. Mao Jun and the other man were terrified. How could it be like this? It was just a sword, but the sword light it shot out could automatically form a killing formation, causing them to feel scared at first sight, and only have one thought: escape. In reality, this killing formation's destructive power was indeed terrifying, killing Ling Han previously. If he hadn't comprehended toughness and gentleness, he wouldn't have been able to obtain this treasured sword at all. And he only obtained this sword, and didn't defeat this sword. There was a huge difference. Once the killing formation was unleashed, it was equivalent to joining hands with Ling Han, and could kill high-level deity transformation tier elites. How terrifying was that? In just a few moves, Mao Jun and the other man were riddled with wounds, blood spilling. Everyone was stunned. This was too powerful. Defying a major tier was still so fierce. Didn't that mean that as long as Ling Han reached the heaven tier, he'd be qualified to compete for the strongest in the world? With Ling Han's age and cultivation, no one would think that the spiritual infant tier and deity transformation tier would be stuck for long. Brother Mao, let's use our ultimate move together. As long as we can withstand a few more moves, reinforcements will definitely come. Qi Ligua said. Okay. Mao Jun's expression focused, and lightning instantly circled around his body. His eyes also became a blazing white, as if turning into lightning eyes. To use a big move, there were only two choices. First, spend time to accumulate power. The so-called big move was naturally extremely powerful, far surpassing normal attacks. However, this also required a longer time to accumulate power. Heaven was fair. However, it could also make the time to accumulate power extremely short, even as fast as a normal strike. This required a price. Through self-harming or overdrafting, he squeezed out his potential and quickly used his ultimate move. As the saying went, to kill 1,000 enemies, one would suffer 800 casualties. Generally speaking, no one would easily choose the second option. Instead, they would use guerrilla warfare to accumulate power, and then unleash a big move to determine the outcome of the battle. However, Mao Jun did not have the time to fight back. Under the onslaught of Ling Han and the sword formation, he had to give it his all in every strike. Every time he struck, he would be injured. If he still wanted to conserve energy for a big move, it would be more like courting death. Therefore, he had to sacrifice himself to forcefully unleash his ultimate move. Boom, his entire body transformed into a bolt of lightning, and he grew to a height of around 10 meters, just like a giant. Then, he chopped down with his palm toward Ling Han. This wasn't the thunderclap 9 heavens, but the azure thunder sect also played with lightning. It wasn't a problem for them to transform their bodies into lightning. However, it was a stretch of azure lightning, unlike the thunderclap 9 heavens which was blazing white. Lightning overflowed in all directions, its destructive power incomparably terrifying. Brother Qi, where do you go? Mao Jun was just about to call out to Qi Li Gua to attack Ling Han together, but unexpectedly, with a glance, he discovered that Ling Han had already escaped without a trace. Ling Han's proposal to attack together to stall for time was simply a pretense. The goal was to make him risk his life and buy time for Ling Han to escape. Qi Li Gua, all 18 generations of your family's ancestors. Mao Jun shouted harshly. If he had to fight against Ling Han alone, even if he unleashed a big move, he wouldn't be able to stall for long, and after the big move? He would fall into a weakened state, and could only be trampled on. Brother Mao, I will bring people back to avenge you. In the distance, Qi Li Gua's voice was heard. Truly shameless. Ling Han sneered and leaped up, temporarily storing the Revere Life Sword into the Black Tower. He took out the Sunset Bow, drew out a precious arrow, and knocked it. 3 great mystical powers were unleashed at the same time, locking onto Qi Li Gua. Hee hee. Seeing this, Mao Jun actually chose to watch with folded arms. Xiao, an arrow. Qi Li Gua was really being led by a dog. He originally thought that with Mao Jun keeping Ling Han busy, and him running so far away, he would definitely be safe. But in the instant when he was the most relaxed, the attack arrived, and it was so fast, so accurate, and so ruthless. Pooh, an arrow pierced through his heart. This arrow was known to destroy dragons and stars, and added with the murderous aura of the thunderclap 9th heaven and the eye of truth that could penetrate weak points, the power of this arrow was naturally terrifying to the extreme. Qi Li Gua staggered forward a few more steps, and slowly turned around, looking blankly at Ling Han and Mao Jun, completely clueless about the situation. But when Mao Jun's lips curled into a cold smile, he finally regretted it. If he chose to fight alongside Mao Jun, the two of them would be of one mind and use a big move together, and they might be able to block Ling Han until reinforcements arrived. But he didn't want to risk his life, and tricked Mao Jun, but in the end, he died first. Too regretful. He crashed to the ground, and fresh blood flowed out from his ruptured heart, dyeing the ground red. Xiao, Mao Jun dodged hurriedly. He now turned into lightning, and although it wasn't a mystical power, his speed was still shockingly fast. Ling Han waved the blood-sucking origin gold, retrieving the precious arrow he shot out, and then quickly chased after Mao Jun. He also turned into lightning, and it could be felt that his speed was obviously faster than the others, rapidly shortening the distance between them. Zhu Xian'er, Hun Yo, and Rabbit also hurriedly followed. Mao Jun panicked and didn't choose a path. He now only had one thought, and that was to escape. The youngster behind him was too terrifying, and he wasn't someone he could match. His speed wasn't slow, and a person appeared in front of him. He was tall and slender, seemingly ordinary, but with his eyes, one would discover that he seemed to have entered a galaxy with infinite space. Su Xiu ran, "Martial nephew Su, save me." He was overjoyed, and hurriedly shouted. However, Su Xiu ran revealed an anxious expression, and stretched out his hand, shouting, "Careful." "Careful of what?" Mao Jun was startled. Pooh! A long sword had already pierced through his body, and a terrifying killing intent swept out, quickly obliterating his spirit. Pa! His body went limp, and he slid to the ground while leaning on the long sword. Ling Han withdrew his sword and looked coldly at Su Xiu Ran. He didn't mind slaughtering a genius of the Absolute Saber sect. Every time he eliminated an expert of the 5 sects, he would sweep away an obstacle for the future, splitting open the skies, especially geniuses like Su Xiu Ran and Jia Ming, who would definitely be difficult opponents in the future. "That's Mao Jun of the Azure Thunder sect," Su Xiu Ran said. "So what?" Ling Han said coldly. "You killed Small Saber King, and then Mao Jun. Are you rebelling against the Restore Heaven Academy?" Su Xiu Ran said unhurriedly. Ling Han cracked a smile, and said, "There's another one over there, called Qi Ligua, who was also killed by me." "That's the Heaven Sword sects." Su Xiu Ran didn't get angry, and appeared extremely calm. "Ling Han, I originally wanted to treat you as an opponent, but you sought your own death. In the future, you won't have the chance to fight me." Chapter 737. "You mean, I'm dead for sure," Ling Han said indifferently. "Deader than dead." Su Xiu Ran nodded. "You're just a corpse that can breathe now." The 5 great sects ruled the vast lands for 1 to 200,000 years. This was an extremely long time, and the king's position was unshakable, especially after 10,000 years of accumulation. The number of Shattering Void tier elites was enough to make every force despair. To kill a mere spiritual infant tier brat, could there still be an accident? Even if Ling Han was now in the Shattering Void tier, so what? Being chased by hundreds of Shattering Void tier elites, no matter how nature-defying your battle prowess was, you could only die with a grievance. One had to know that those who could cultivate to the Shattering Void tier were qualified to shatter the void and become gods, and which one of them wasn't a stunning genius of an era that you could easily kill? The strength of humanity's peak. Ling Han laughed loudly, and said, "Then let this corpse of mine slaughter you first." "Is that possible?" Su Xiu Ran unleashed the Absolute Saber. "I had some fortuitous encounters, and my comprehension of saber arts went up another level, allowing the Absolute Saber's power to double. Today, what will you use to stop me?" He was indeed proud. Previously, when the Demon Birth Sword fully awakened, it was only evenly matched with the Absolute Saber, but now that the Absolute Saber's power doubled again, this was obviously a complete suppression. "Oh, is that so?" Ling Han smiled slightly. He was unafraid, because he wasn't using the Demon Birth Sword anymore. Taking 10,000 steps back, he still had the Black Tower. Su Xiu Ran didn't speak anymore, and just stared at Ling Han. Saber chi overflowed from his body, forming the shadow of a heavenly saber behind him. This was extremely terrifying. He was clearly only in the deity transformation tier, but this heavenly saber impressively had the aura of the heaven tier. A super genius that could reverse the battle of a major tier. The heavenly saber slashed down. It was a few hundred meters long, so the area it covered was shockingly large. Ling Han raised his fist to take it head-on. This wasn't a slash from the opponent with the Absolute Saber, so Ling Han also wanted to know how much of a difference in strength there was between him and this Absolute Saber sect's #1 genius. He didn't dare to underestimate Su Xiu Ran at all, and used his full strength in this punch. Boom! Although he had only punched out with his fist, a sword ray flashed out to meet Tian Dao. Skyblade smashed down, instantly crushing the sword beam before smashing into Ling Han's fist. Ling Han's arm began to tremble like waves, and it was even as if dough was being pressed into a pancake. His long arm had actually turned into an open umbrella, and it was indescribably strange. As the saber slashed down, Ling Han was forced back 7 meters. A wound also appeared on the back of his hand. Several blood vessels on his arm had burst open, dyeing his entire arm red. But that was it. Su Xiaoran couldn't help but reveal an expression of shock, and said, combining hardness and softness. He frowned slightly. Even if a normal body technique had reached the level of combining hardness and softness, it would still be impossible for it to receive one of his blades. It was like how even the softest dough would be sliced into two by a sharp blade. Ling Han swung his arm, and circulated the indestructible Heaven's Scroll. The body of Diamond could already heal injuries on its own, and instantly healed his injuries. His skin was as smooth as jade, glowing with divine light. Su Xiaoran was cold. He raised the absolute saber vertically. Although he had absolute confidence that he could kill Ling Han with his own strength, he was more concerned with the overall situation. Such a monster had to be eradicated as soon as possible, and he definitely couldn't leave behind any future troubles. So, he would use the absolute saber to send him on his way without any suspense. The absolute saber shone faintly. It was obviously already damaged, and the blade was mottled, yet it emitted a terrifying aura that could suppress the heavens and the earth. Saber intent circulated, and this saber came alive, as if it had its own will, no longer under Su Xiaoran's control. Elites naturally had pride, who could control it? Ling Han raised the Revere Life sword horizontally. This sword also seemed to feel threatened. Layers of formation patterns shone, and killing intent circulated. This was a killing formation. The absolute saber emitted a shocking grand light that soared into the sky, overshadowing the sun here until it was dim. At this moment, it seemed to have transformed into a supreme shattering void tier elite that could cut through everything. On the other hand, the brilliance of the Revere Life sword's formation patterns was restrained, as if it had turned into an ordinary sword. However, Ling Han knew that this killing sword was also in a state where it could kill anything that stood in its way. A dog that bites doesn't bark, and the strongest killing sword obviously didn't need a grand appearance to set off its power. It was a sword of slaughter, and everything was for the sake of slaughter. Su Xiaoran revealed a surprised expression. He obviously recognized that this wasn't the 10th tier spirit tool that Ling Han used previously. However, it wasn't as if Ling Han didn't know the absolute saber's power, yet he switched to a sword to meet it. What did this mean? Could it be that this sword was even stronger? He really didn't believe it. How could a 10th tier spirit tool be so easy to obtain? Even shattering void tier elites might not have one each. Did they think that 10th tier rare metals were innumerable? So be it if you obtained one, but you could actually switch to use it. It was really hard to believe. The absolute saber took the initiative to attack, and slashed towards Ling Han. The Revere Life sword also broke away from Ling Han's control, and automatically flew up. Endless sword light turned, and greeted the absolute saber. The two ultimate treasures made a great collision, and in the horrifying aftershock, the earth instantly cracked open, and the sun in the sky was also on the verge of collapse. It was originally a huge fireball, so how could it withstand such a strong impact? After one strike, the absolute saber and the Revere Life sword both retreated. The absolute saber emitted a black light, while the Revere Life sword led endless white light. The two divided the world into two worlds of black and white, absolutely opposing each other. Su Xiaoran's expression finally changed. The absolute saber actually didn't gain the upper hand. How was this possible? The absolute saber was a weapon used by an ancient great elite of the absolute saber sect. It was originally just an ordinary tool, and the material was at most 3rd tier, but under the continuous nourishment of that great elite's own essence, this saber gradually shed its ordinary body, and became a real heavenly saber. That great elite spirit was the absolute saber's bone, so even after thousands of years, this saber was even damaged, but there was still a portion of saber intent left, and it was still the world's most powerful spirit tool. Among all 10th tier spirit tools, this could definitely be ranked in the top 10, and even top 3 wouldn't be an exaggeration. However, the absolute saber was blocked. What sword was that? It was too nature-defying, wasn't it? Ling Han smiled faintly, and said, "Come, our spirit tools can't be used anymore." Now that the two treasures were activated on their own, neither Ling Han nor Su Xiao-ran could intervene. How could a shattering void tier battle be something they could participate in? However, Ling Han had quite a lot of spirit tools on him. He unleashed the demon birth sword, and said, "Come, let's fight." Even with Su Xiao-ran's temperament, he couldn't help but want to curse. You still had a 10th tier spirit tool. Fortunately, if the 10th tier spirit tool hadn't awakened, it wasn't impossible to resist. He used his palm as a saber, and with the absolute saber, how could he still have other sabers? If he needed other sabers, he could only match Ling Han with his bare hands now. Chapter 738. Heng. A terrifying aura vibrated, and a figure shot out at an astonishing speed. Even the light emitted by the absolute saber and revere life sword couldn't conceal him. This was a tall man with a bare upper body and bulging muscles. He floated in the air like a tall mountain that people could only look up to. Lord Gulin. Su Xiao-ran hurriedly saluted respectfully. This was a cultivator who had broken through to the next tier. Otherwise, so what if he was in the heaven tier? He couldn't break into the battle range of the absolute saber and revere life sword. The earth overturning seal is on this boy? Gu Lin asked. He was an elite of the Earth Dragon sect, and was naturally known for his physical arts. He didn't need to use origin power to protect himself, and just let the saber and sword slash over, explode countless sparks on his chest, but couldn't hurt him at all. After all, these were only the aftermath of the battle. In reply to Lord, yes. Su Xiao-ran said respectfully. Gu Lin nodded, and directly reached out with a palm, grabbing towards Ling Han. As a shattering void tier elite, he obviously didn't need to care about any rules, acting as he pleased. So what if he offended all the elites in the world? If he wanted to run, he could definitely run, so of course he was willful. A mere spiritual infant tier junior, he obviously didn't need to take it to heart, and couldn't be bothered to interrogate. Wouldn't it be better to just capture him? Ling Han immediately wanted to enter the Black Tower. If a shattering void tier elite attacked, he couldn't resist at all unless the demon birth sword revived on its own. However, this sword didn't react now, and obviously wouldn't stand up for him. How useless. You're actually attacking a junior. A disdainful voice rang out, and a large hand pressed down on Gu Lin's palm. Both sides stretched out their origin energy hands, and they were large like mountains. As soon as they collided, an enormous rumbling sound instantly resounded out, and a terrifying force shot out in all directions. It caused the sun in the sky to flicker indeterminately, and it was on the verge of being extinguished. A man wrapped in flames appeared. He was tall and slender, with long hair draped over his shoulders. His hair was also wrapped in flames, dancing in the wind. Flowers formed by flames bloomed under his feet, making him seem to have transformed into the King of Flames. Flame King. Gu Lin snorted, killing intent dancing in his eyes, and said, "You dare meddle in other people's business. What this king wants to do has nothing to do with you," the Flame King said indifferently. If you don't want to die here, then scram immediately." Gu Lin shouted. The Flame King placed his hands behind his back and said, "Don't you know that this is the remnant left behind by the ancient dynasty that we established countless years ago? The earth-overturning seal that you covet is the divine ability that the seventh Earth Spirit King grasped. Since this king is here, how can I sit by and watch this divine ability land in the hands of your 5 great sects?" Gu Lin was stunned. No wonder the Purple Moon dynasty was so powerful. Back then, they had swept away the 5 major sects and almost ended their inheritance. If it were not for the fact that the 5 major sects had their roots in the immortal realm, they might really have disappeared forever. To be able to pass on divine abilities, what kind of concept was that? It meant that the divine ability had been perfected. The Flame King didn't seem to be interested in this divine ability. What did this mean? Thinking up to this point, Gu Lin suddenly shuddered. The Purple Moon Empire had made a comeback, and could they really repeat the glory of several tens of thousands of years ago? No, no, no. This time, their strength was also much stronger. The number of Shattering Void tier elites was more than 4 times, and the environment had also reached the highest point in 10,000 years, with countless geniuses emerging. On the other hand, although the Purple Moon Empire had changed its name, there wouldn't be much change in strength. He calmed down, and said, "Since you don't want it, why meddle in other people's business?" "Ha ha ha, this king doesn't want it, but I can't let an idiot like you get it." The Flame King sneered. Besides, this mystical power was taken out from the library by this boy. It was the mystical power that chose him, so how could an idiot like you covet it? Gu Lin couldn't help but be furious. He, a dignified Shattering Void tier elite, was actually called an idiot left and right, so how could he tolerate it? "Then I'll kill you first." Gu Lin sneered, and the shadow of a large snake appeared behind him, suddenly twisting towards the Flame King. The Flame King stretched out his right hand and pressed down. Hong, a fire tiger as huge as a mountain pounced out, meeting the large snake head-on. Peng, 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 the large snake and the fire tiger fought fiercely, but the outcome was soon decided. The large snake was defeated, and the snake's head was stepped under the feet of the fire tiger. No matter how hard it struggled, it was useless. "Trash," the Flame King said coldly. Gu Lin was furious, but what could he do if he wasn't strong enough? It wasn't without reason that the 8 kings could sweep through the 5 great sects, but these 8 kings were indeed extremely tyrannical. Hee, the Flame King is so mighty. Another figure appeared, fearless of the battle between the Absolute Saber and the Revere Life Sword. This was a man as gentle as jade, tall and slender, carrying a long sword on his back, having an air of immortality. The strangest thing about him was his eyes. His pupils were actually 2 swords, which made him look extremely strange. "You're the trash of the Heaven's Sword sect, right?" The Flame King swept a glance over with a very casual look, seemingly not taking the 2 great Shattering Void tier elites seriously. "Heaven's Sword sect's Ma Yutang greets the Flame King," the sword-bearing man said with a warm smile, and even clasped his hands in greeting. The Flame King ignored him, and just looked at Ling Han, saying, "Young man, your luck isn't bad. This sword was personally made by my emperor, and you've also obtained the 7th mystical power, so you're destined to be fated with my Purple Moon Empire. Leave, now isn't the time for people at your level to participate." Ling Han obviously had no intention of intervening in the battle of Shattering Void tier elites. He immediately withdrew the Revere Life Sword, took Zhu Xian air, and immediately used his movement technique to leave. Hun Yo and Rabbit naturally followed behind him. "Did I allow you to leave?" Gu Lin made a move, grabbing towards Ling Han. Hong, a flame swept past, forcing Gu Lin to retreat. It was the Flame King who made a move. He said proudly, "This king said to let them leave, and you actually still dare to make a move. Are you courting death?" "Humph, now isn't the past. Purple Moon Empire has long become the dust of history, and you old antiques should also completely disappear, no longer belonging to this era," Gu Lin said. Xiao, Ma Yutang also made a move to grab at Ling Han. This brat had a mystical power on him, so he definitely couldn't be allowed to leave. The Flame King once again threw a punch, blocking Ma Yutang. He smiled proudly, and said, "This king is here, and you guys still want to make a splash?" Join forces. Ma Yutang and Gu Lin looked at each other, and both made their moves, attacking the Flame King. The Flame King laughed loudly, and his figure rapidly expanded, turning into a giant flaming man that was 30 meters in size. There were golden patterns all over his body that shone, turning into chains that twined around his body. The power of regulations. Ma Yutang's expression instantly changed. Chapter 739. When she heard the word, make a fortune, Li Weiwei's beautiful eyes immediately lit up. Because Ling Han had been in seclusion all this while, the business of selling ingredients naturally could only be interrupted. With the size of her and Ji Yun, her spatial spirit tool, the ingredients they stored could only support them for a dozen or so days at most. Not long after they returned, they had all been sold out by them. Because of this, the two girls were extremely regretful. Because Ling Han had not appeared for so long, they had also become greedy. How do we make a fortune? She hurriedly asked. There is going to be a great auction soon. If I have money, I will be able to make father look at me differently. What auction? Ling Han asked. Oh, the imperial capital will hold an auction every once in a while, and this time just happens to be not long after the end of the Heavenly Sea Mystery Realm. Naturally, it will be a little more grand, and there will be a considerable number of good things, Li Weiwei said a little excitedly. She paused, and her pretty face turned fierce. She said, you still haven't told me how to make a fortune. Ling Han laughed loudly, and said, isn't that simple? Aren't we betting on when Zhao Luan and I will fight? Li Weiwei came to her senses at this point, and immediately clapped her hands and jumped up. She said, we will go and place our bet first, and then you will go and challenge Zhao Luan. No, what if Zhao Luan ignores you? Ling Han snickered, and said, then we will have to see how impressive you, the daughter of the left minister, are. Can you change the bet to when I challenge Zhao Luan? Otherwise, there would be no need for him to drag Li Weiwei into this. Li Weiwei nodded repeatedly, looking like she understood. However, a worried expression soon appeared on her face, and she said, but what if Zhao Luan accepts the challenge, and you are killed by him? In any case, it has nothing to do with me, so whatever. She answered herself, and indeed wasn't worried at all. Ling Han laughed, and said, Zhao Luan definitely can't kill me, and if it weren't for the fact that he has advanced into the consummate level, it is possible that he could be killed by me. This wasn't an exaggeration. His present physique had reached the level of level 3 godly metal, and even consummate level cultivators would need some time to break through it. Moreover, he still had the crimson ground locking net. Then, under this net, Zhao Luan's cultivation level would drop sharply. Previously, those people from the Luo clan had wanted to use this divine net to deal with the Lava Beast King, which meant that they were confident that they could kill that Beast King with the help of this net. From this, it could be deduced that the effect of the divine net should be that it could weaken a person by a minor level. Zhao Luan's cultivation level had dropped by a minor level, and he was still trapped by the divine net, which affected his mobility. If Ling Han used the annihilating dragon star arrow, it was not impossible that he could insta-kill the latter. After all, the Beast King had also been at the early stage of the consummate level, and it hadn't even been trapped by the net. Hadn't it still almost been killed by a single arrow from him? However, could he kill the only son of the great General Zhao? Not even if they fought on the arena of life and death. Wasn't he afraid that this great general would become murderous and disregard the rules to kill him? The stronger one was, the less restrictive the rules would be. In the first place, rules were imposed by the strong on the weak, and whether one obeyed them or not was completely up to their mood. Unless, of course, Ling Han hid in the Black Tower after killing Zhao Luan. However, he wasn't alone, and there was still the Great Ling Empire. Ling Han shook his head. If he couldn't kill Zhao Luan, he could only ruthlessly whip him and teach him a lesson that he wouldn't forget. Moreover, as long as Zhao Luan wasn't crippled or killed, Great General Zhao wouldn't be so shameless as to personally make a move. More importantly, even if he had the Crimson Ground locking net, could it suppress Zhao Luan? Zhao Luan was a 4-star genius, and even if his cultivation level had been suppressed by a minor level, his battle prowess could still reach the early stage of the consummate level. Meanwhile, Ling Han was currently in the early stage of the medium extreme, and was a complete minor level behind Zhao Luan. Moreover, he could only display battle prowess surpassing 5 stars at most. Otherwise, who knew what the consequences would be? One had to realize that he had ascended the island 3 times, and displayed potential that surpassed 4 stars. He was close to 5 stars, and this was already enough to make 2 majestic empires want to kill him in the cradle. Then, his battle prowess of 6 stars would definitely be enough to make one unable to eat or sleep in peace. In your dreams. Li Weiwei shook her head, and said, "You still don't know, right?" After Zhao Luan broke through, he was conferred the title of a 7th-rank military official by Her Imperial Majesty the Empress, and his name is listed on the totem. He can use power of the nation, and at least increase his battle prowess by 1 star. Ling Han frowned. In that case, it was practically impossible for him to defeat Zhao Luan. Unless everything went as he expected, and he could first use the Crimson Ground locking net to trap his opponent, and then use the annihilating Dragon Star arrow to severely wound him. Could he avoid shooting vital points like his head and heart? Moreover, he only had this one chance. If he missed it, he could only admit defeat. Ling Han pondered for a moment, and said, "If I battle with Zhao Luan, there will definitely be new bets. I believe that practically the banker would not be so stupid as to directly set out 2 choices, me or Zhao Luan, who will win. Instead, it would be a question of how many moves Zhao Luan can use to defeat me and make me surrender." N. Li Weiwei nodded repeatedly. Otherwise, the banker would definitely suffer a huge loss. Ling Han broke into a grin, and said, "Then let's use Zhao Luan to earn a fortune first, and then trample him underfoot in future." Li Weiwei was astonished. Why was this stupid blockhead so confident? One had to know that he had only come from a small world, and did not have any background, so what made him think that Zhao Luan would not be able to kill him? But it could not be denied that this kind of confidence added an additional enchanting quality to him. "Then quickly take out the money, I will go and place the bet right now." Very soon, her mind was filled with the word earn a fortune, and even her small face was glowing. After Ling Han had entered into the Heavenly Sea Mystery Realm, he had made a small fortune, all of which he had obtained through confiscation. Though he had spent a little on cultivation and breaking through to the medium extreme afterwards, added with his previous savings, he still had 4,000 true origin stones, and he handed them all to Li Weiwei. Li Weiwei left impatiently, and only returned a day later. She told him that everything was settled, and that he was only waiting for him to challenge Zhao Luan. Ling Han immediately wrote a letter of challenge, and pasted it on the main doors of the Northern Institution. It was naturally a challenge to Zhao Luan. As if the news had grown wings, it instantly spread throughout the Northern Institution, the Scarlet Heaven Academy, and the whole imperial capital. Everyone was discussing spiritedly. They had not thought that this prodigy who had remained silent for more than half a year would finally appear again. Furthermore, he had appeared in such a high-profile manner, and actually issued a challenge to Zhao Luan. Who was Zhao Luan? He was the only son of the great General Zhao, and the strongest prodigy in 1,000 years. High hopes were placed on him, and it was possible that he would reach the heavenly body tier. All of a sudden, everyone in the imperial capital was guessing whether Zhao Luan would accept the challenge or not. This junior brother is quite interesting. He has just ascended to the low extreme division, and has already begun to challenge Zhao Luan. In a courtyard of the Western Institution, there was currently a young man in blue sitting comfortably, sipping tea. Behind him stood a woman in martial arts attire. Her figure was slender, and the leather martial arts attire completely outlined her sexy figure, causing one to drool. Furthermore, her appearance did not disappoint such a fine figure, and was filled with a wild allure. Her black hair was tied into a large braid that hung straight down to her buttocks, causing her perfectly round and perky buttocks to appear even more impressive. This woman saw that there was not much water left in the teacup of the young man in blue, and hurriedly poured some for him. She said, "Young master, in your opinion, will Zhao Luan accept the challenge?" You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.